This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast presented by ClutchPoints, powered by DraftKings. Like, follow, and subscribe. Rate us, review us on Apple, Spotify, and of course YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Sheldon Alexander, and I'm joined by Matt Russell, sports betting professional, creator of The Window, available on Substack and wherever you get your podcasts. Mr. Matt Russell, we are into week 16. I forgot to hit record the first time we started rolling on this. And now, of course, the second time trying to do this intro, not nearly as good as the first time I did the intro, but the fans would never know that. But I'm telling you anyways, because, you know, just try to keep it real here on this pod. How are you doing as we keep it real on this Wednesday morning?
I'm good. I'm doing slightly worse than I was 2 minutes ago when we did this intro before you hit record. I think it's nice that you're setting that up because, listen, I screwed some stuff up last week. We're going to get into that. You know, maybe stuff gets screwed up this week, either on your side of things, my side of things. Maybe the control room gets a little loose because everybody's fired up for Christmas, I guess. True. I don't know. No, they're fired up for a lot of football games, right? You know, we got college football playoff coming up this weekend. That's coinciding. It's an absolute epic double screen situation with a couple of really good football games on Saturday. I wasn't even really sort of ready for the NFL to schedule the two games for next Saturday that they did. Like, I was going through the look ahead stuff that we'll obviously talk about when it comes to next week. I was like, oh, those are the two games that are on Saturday. Like, obviously, we've got our triple header on Christmas and, of course, bowl games galore. I mean, just get me to the new year as far as, like, being able to kind of chill out and relax here. But we're doing fine. We're loving life. Yeah, it's good stuff.
You get me to the new year. Yeah. Huge cosign for me there as well.
People don't understand. Like, yeah, this is, you know, Christmas. You're gonna, spending like a half a day on Christmas Eve with like family or whatever, and they're like, "So, time off this holiday season?" You're like, "You see how there's football games on all of the time?" Like, no, man.
Like, the Raptors game you're watching, right? Days. It's like, there's a Raptors game that you're sitting at home watching with all of your family.
You know why you're watching two TVs and your screen on your phone right now? Like, there's stuff happening in like a really big way. So super fun, super exciting time. But if we're looking at actual time off, even for a day or two, we're going to need to sort of catch me in 2026. But you know what? We do this because we love it. So, we got a bunch of ridiculous games last week that we can refer back to, and hopefully maybe not as many ridiculous games this week. The point spreads are a little bit tighter than they were last week, right? Last week it was just an absolute gong show of, double-digit point spreads and some games that probably could have been double-digit point spreads based on what they actually produced as far as entertainment value is concerned.
Yeah, complete ridiculousness going on last week for sure. And it was one of those weeks where I felt like I deserved a better fate. But that happens sometimes. Mm-hmm. We'll get there. But for those who might be new to the pod here, what we do, I'm going to give you a pick to each and every game on the sched, and then Matt comes in with the information and education on where the line was, where it is, and where it could be heading into kickoff. I come out on the other end with a much more informed pick. I try to play the role of the viewer, and sometimes Matt convinces me to change my pick, and other times I foolishly don't listen, but that's a joke. That's a show. That's the bit. I will say the switches last week were pretty good if my memory serves. Obviously,
I got to step in.
I could go back.
I got to step in.
Hold on.
People are going to be mad. People are going to be mad. Okay.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Give me a second.
Do your thing.
Give me a second.
I feel guilt. Go ahead.
Are you talking about Thursday night? Is that what? Are you talking about Thursday night?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I don't. Listen, we'll talk about it. I'm gonna do your thing. Do your thing. See, we're gonna screw this up. My turn to screw it up. It's okay. My turn to screw the podcast up.
It's all right. It's all. No,
I want to get this out. I want to get this out quickly. But go ahead. People know what I'm talking about, so it's fine.
Oh, the people know. Okay.
No, the people know. I'm sure they do.
So as I say, the goal is to win more than I lose. Last week was a 9-7 week, which I'll gladly take. But I mean, I feel like I deserved a much better fate last week. But season total 111, 109, and 4 as we keep things rolling into week 16. And I guess before we get to this Thursday night, do you want to talk about last Thursday night? Is that what I'm sensing here or no?
It wasn't what I'm referring to. We'll save it. I just want to let everybody know that I know that they know that they know that I know that I know that they know that we screwed something up last week, or I screwed something up last week. No, I don't even. What last
Just
week?
when
Tampa
we
Bay
get
and
there.
Atlanta. Yeah, we'll get. Listen, last week was last week, man. It was a 14-point lead with the favorite.
Yeah, I mean,
You know what I mean? Like, what are you
yeah,
supposed to be
that
mad
was
at other
insane.
than just like, right? Like, yeah, like that's the idea. If
It
you've
was
got
Kirk
minus five
Cousins
and a
and
half,
what do we call it? You got footballed. It was Kirk Cousins and Kyle
yeah,
Pitts. Like Atlanta Falcons
yeah,
fans have been waiting to see that Kyle Pitts for like his entire career. And as a Kirk Cousins
right.
fantasy owner in a 2-quarterback league where I have Kirk Cousins starting and Patrick Mahomes starting, listen, there's chaos going on. Just so much happening right now. But I'll say this. Yeah, I'm not mad at it. That's
Yeah,
one of those where you lose
yeah.
that game last Thursday and it's just like, it's Thursday night. It's Kirk Cousins. It's Kyle Pitts. They came back and won. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Yeah,
But
there's no, yeah, all you want. You got all you want out of that one. Yeah.
what are we going to do about this Thursday night's football game? As this is a
Yeah.
big boy of the big boyest games possible. We got the LA Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. It's an NFC West showdown, division on the line, the NFC conference on the line. The Rams continue to look really good offensively last week. And the Seahawks, I mean, struggled to beat Old Man Rivers last week, but that's a story that, like, I mean, we'll get to the Colts, I guess, at the end of this pod, but the Seahawks were
Yeah.
able to pull off the victory at the end. As we look at this game here, the Seahawks are favored by 1.5. And I got to be honest here, I'm on the Rams. This has been a tough one all season long. These two teams have just been going toe to toe in the NFC West. And my pause here with rolling with the Rams is we love the two-headed monster that was Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams goes down in that game. We'll get an update on his injury status. Again, we're doing this on Wednesday. The game is on Thursday. But
Yeah.
here's my thing. Here's my thing here. The Rams, this is an institutional bet for me here on me believing in the institution of Matthew Stafford, in just what they've been able to do so far, and trusting Matthew Stafford more than I will trust Sam Darnold in gotta have it, must win games, which sounds like the most obvious statement ever. And I know there's a lot of other pieces to that, but I'm starting there and making this an institutional pick of being on the side of the Rams here in this must-win game for the division, for the conference. What say you, my friend, as this line is -1.5 for the Seahawks?
Well, that's, I think, what we need to talk about first, right? Because we go off of, you're grabbing lines off of DraftKings. You haven't mentioned, while it says -1.5 on the Seahawks on the point spread, Shell, I'm going to direct you to the money line, right? Where it's
Correct.
-110 on either side on the money line. So, if you're grabbing that +1.5, you're then paying -122 currently. So, if you can easily just go to a sportsbook right now that has the Seahawks as the 1.5 point underdog with the same level of juice sort of assigned. So this is a pick'em game. So let's just sort of be honest about like what it is from like a -110 on either side. That being said, if Devontae Adams gets officially ruled out, which I think we're all kind of expecting here, probably by the time anybody listens to this, then you could see this line tick to more flat -1, maybe even a -1.5 with the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, the thing that people are sort of, what do we all do, right? Like, what's the most recent thing that happened? Well, the Rams came back on the Lions down 10 in the first half and really had sort of no trouble doing so against Detroit, a team that everybody kind of thinks is obviously pretty good. And meanwhile, Seattle, as you mentioned, had trouble with the Colts. And so initially, and then obviously you can go back to week 11 where Sam Darnold throws those 4 interceptions against the Rams, right? So if you sort of have that opinion that you do, it's not wrong by any stretch of the imagination. It's just sort of understanding what that's based off of, right?
Yeah.
And so like that is the basis for that opinion. Obviously, the other sort of element to this, which is what makes this game so tricky to pull the trigger on really either side, is that if we didn't get the greatest punt maybe of all time at the end of that game, there's a possibility that Seattle gets themselves into better field goal range. You'll remember They had a field goal attempt to win that game, and they covered that game. And so they go down 14-3 in that game, and Darnold's throwing interceptions left and right. And so it's very easy to take in that game and experience that game from a really negative Seattle position. right up until the point where Seattle actually covers the game and cashes all those tickets. And so you'll remember perhaps back in week 11 that I said two things. I said, number one, I'm really excited for this Seattle and LA game. But it's probably a more interesting football game than it is a betting opportunity. And it kind of really played out like that, right? Where it's you can feel really good about having bet the Rams, and then all of a sudden they don't cover, and you can feel really bad about betting the Seahawks, and all of a sudden they do cover. And then the other thing that I said was, you'll remember that week, Detroit and Philadelphia were playing on Sunday Night Football, and I mentioned that I was really excited for the two best teams in the NFC playing each other, and I was also excited for the Eagles and the Lions game, right? Implying that these are the two best teams in the NFC. And so nothing's really happened. Nothing's really happened since then to sort of dissuade me from that opinion. So again, it is a more interesting game for all of the other things that are happening around it. Coach of the Year markets, MVP markets, Offensive Player of the Year award markets, even potentially Defensive Rookie of the Year markets. Like, there's a ton going on that people out there, bettors out there, have tickets on. And so that complicates it even further beyond the fact that it's this pick'em game, this great matchup. And we don't really know, we don't really know what side we should be taking because we're kind of confused by the fact that we have various tickets. If you have a Josh Allen to win the MVP ticket, you want the Seattle Seahawks to win this game. If you have a Mike Vrabel Coach of the Year ticket, you want the Rams to win this game because it hurts Mike McDonald's cause, right? Like, there's all of this other stuff. And so it's this, and so it's this really awesome game that's going to be really fun to watch. And you don't really need to bet a side on it, probably, unless you're just like not in on any futures. We talked last week about the 49ers, your 49ers plus 700 to win the division. Nothing's changed on that. They still are plus 700. They won the game last week, which everybody expected them to do so. They still have this scenario where if Seattle wins on Thursday night and they beat Seattle on the final week of the season, then the 49ers not only win the division, they also win the number one seed in the NFC. And those odds are all parallel, by the way, for either side. So there's not really anything to gain by going for the whole gusto on that number one seed. But so, like, again, like, even you, maybe betless, are sitting there going, as a 49ers fan, I have a side that I want to win this game. So to me, maybe there's a bet on the total. You have to go over to the window to check that one out. So again, I have more sort of invested on the concept, right down to that 49ers bet that we talked about last week, on Seattle winning. So I'm going to be cheering for Seattle, but I also have to admit my own bias. And my own bias is sitting there going like, I want Seattle to win this game. If I felt the need to hedge or whatever, then that would lead me to bet on the Rams, right? And so, but like, that's not really telling you anything from a handicapping perspective either, right? Because I think the Seattle Seahawks can be proud of themselves from that game against the Rams, where they hung in there and obviously had a chance to win that game. So I don't think it's as clear cut. One thing that does need to be sort of discussed, right, is the weather. You're going to get, it seems like, basically it's just rain. Shocking, right? It's going to be rain in Seattle. Basically, the entire forecast for the next 4 days appears to be a significant amount of rain. Now, whether that happens during the game, talk to Mother Nature about that one, right? But the only other time that the Rams have played in any kind of a weather situation this year was in Baltimore. You'll remember it was a no Lamar Jackson and no basically anybody type of a game. Remember the Rams were like minus 7.5 on the road in a game where like the Ravens botched goal line situation where if they had just sort of scored there, they really would have had a chance to win, let alone cover that number. Ends up where the Rams win 17-3. And again, a really kind of grim type of a weather condition situation. And the Rams had like 240 yards, I think, total in that game. Again, against an incredibly banged up Ravens unit that's certainly given up a lot more yards to far worse offenses. And so you wonder, without Adams, with the rain being the way it is, potentially, like, you're probably going to get a pretty good defensive effort here from the Seattle Seahawks, who, by the way, we've talked about a little bit about the Seahawks secondary over the course of the season and like having different guys in and out, particularly early on. Julian Love came back 2 weeks ago. He played like 30% of the snaps. Then last week, he played like 85% of the snaps for the first time all season long. And this is inclusive of Nick Emenwari, their rookie from South Carolina. They have a full roster of defensive backs, right down to the Reek Wollens and Weatherspoons and Josh Jobs and Julian Love getting up to speed last week. And so if there was ever a time where you would need 5, 6 guys back there that are the guys that you have kind of hoped to have all season long. Well, this is pretty good timing for that, right? Especially if Adams isn't playing, that Puka Nacua is the sort of lone danger out there as far as like game-breaking type player. So, again, there's plenty of reason to like either side. You mentioned obviously the idea of liking the Rams. I like the Seahawks, from like a lean perspective, but I also have to acknowledge that I have some bias in all of that as well.
Well, I am a unbiased journalist here, Matt, and so I'm joking.
Sure.
I'm joking.
One that's watched Sam Darnold for 5 years has its own biases along those lines.
Right?
Yeah.
No. This is an interesting one. This is a super tough game, right? And it's a pick'em game for a reason, because it is a difficult game to pick. But I'm on the Rams here, and you had me almost in talking about the weather, because even a couple weeks ago with the Rams in Carolina, and that wasn't like horrible weather, but it was still that it was very shaky for Mr. Stafford out there, right? He was doing the most. He was wilding in that game, and it wasn't that crazy of weather, but there was some weather going on there as well. So this is an interesting one for sure. And, I'm going to stick with the Rams here, because it's one of those where I need to see you do this, Sam Darnold. I need to see you do this. That's what I'm going with here, or at least that's what I'm telling myself as I stick with the Rams and, then get mad about it in just over 24 hours when this game kicks off. But we move on to Saturday action, and Saturday action in the NFL begins with the Philadelphia Eagles, the 6.5-point favorites in Washington, taking on the Commanders. The Commanders, the latest news there, Jane Daniels out for the season. They decided that,
shut down.
What are we doing here? We're going to shut them down.
Shut down. Yeah.
But with that said, I know you talked about there are a lot of things, you might want to take back from last week. I will say this game features two things that were pretty bang on, two teams last week where we're all over the Commanders. You had me doing the whole plug your nose, just take the Commanders after a week where you want nothing to do with the Commanders, but that's a bounce back nature of the NFL. They bounced back last week. They had a big win last week with Marcus Mariota at the helm. And speaking of bounce backs, the Philadelphia Eagles, who are the most perfect team that you could play against? The Raiders. And the Eagles against the Raiders, Raiders were nowhere in sight. So the Eagles come up with that victory. And now these two teams meet. And my question is, how much am I supposed to take from last week when the Eagles demolished the Raiders? Because it's the Raiders. And, I'm on the Eagles here, -6.5. This is my start here. This is my lean here. And this is just because, maybe I'm feeling like the Eagles are a vibes type team. And maybe the vibes are back after beating the Raiders. I don't know.
Maybe, but this is where the mea culpa comes in, because we talked about this, and I think you were on the Raiders, and I talked you into the Eagles. I'm not sure how aggressively I necessarily needed to talk you into the Eagles, or if that was even really my intent as we talked about the game. But you'll remember part of what we talked about was the idea of Kenny Pickett coming in for Geno Smith, and maybe that would lead to on-time throws instead of a guy just sort of back. Everybody can picture Geno Smith just kind of shuffling his feet back there and then just kind of like panic throwing at somebody. And so I ended up switching myself, and
I
switched
back to the Raiders.
And I did. And everybody, and I shouldn't say everybody that's listening to this, but anybody who's listening who also follows and is a subscriber over to the window knows that this mea culpa was coming, because that was probably, again, hindsight being 2020, the dumbest thing that someone could possibly do. And again, I think my head was in the right place as far as being like, all right, let's get Geno Smith out of there and take our chances with Kenny Pickett. But as you and I always say, right, when one team A blows out team B, it's not usually because team A was awesome. Because it's really hard to be awesome and then just blow out another team who's engaged in the activity of an NFL football game.
Yeah.
When there is a blowout, it is because the team who got blown out absolutely no-showed the football game. And so we were expecting at least a show up for the Raiders with Kenny Pickett, and we got the absolute opposite of that, right? This was arguably the most embarrassing performance of the entire season for any team. And this is a week where many teams lost by, multiple touchdowns. And so, again, you sort of shrug your shoulders because, for a lot of this, as we talk about, market ratings and range and all of this sort of thing is like, all right, we're expecting you to at least kind of stay within your prescribed range of a performance. And when you lose like this, again, we've seen this a handful of times with a handful of teams. You are so far down through the bottom of what was perceived to be your capability that I can't even measure it. Right. And so again, we'll get to the Raiders here in a little bit, but the re-rating of the Raiders, a team at the very start of the season came in with sort of a 35 to 50 type rating, right? Nobody's expecting them to be above average by any means, but there was hope for maybe some improvement. They are now rated by miles as the worst team in the NFL. And this is something that you and I sort of suggested could be a possibility for honestly much of the season. And again, hindsight being 2020, I would have loved to have sort of acknowledged that not just do I think that the Raiders are possibly the worst team in the NFL, that they just are, and then we would make every bet accordingly. So, we'll get to the Raiders. And of course, I sort of teased the idea that they really couldn't be rated any lower than they are. You mentioned, is this more about is that game more about the Eagles or is that more about the Raiders? And so if I'm looking at it going, that's more about the Raiders, then what am I supposed to do with the Eagles rating, which has shot back up, Shell? We're back up into that mid to high 60s range with the Eagles. It's really all that it took to get that re-rating for the Eagles is home beatdown of the Raiders, who had 60 total yards or whatever it was in that game, right? You just go that, so there's not really any reason for me to bump the Eagles back up to really where I felt more comfortable with them, which was kind of in the low 60s. And you could certainly make a case based on how they'd lost 4 straight games or whatever it was, or at least played poorly in those games. And just looking at it and going yes, we're talking about a 6.5 point spread here. I think we have a decent handle on what the Commanders are with Marcus Mariota at the helm, right? We know they're going to be overrated if Jaden Daniels plays. And obviously, he's shut down for the season. And that led us to the bet on the Commanders, against on the Vikings against the Commanders 2 weeks ago. And then with Mariota playing last week, as you mentioned, leading us to a bet on the Commanders last week. And so, no, the rating hasn't really changed for the Commanders. We think that they're a little bit better than the market thinks when it comes to having Marcus Mariota in there. And again, I'm also not going to be necessarily fooled into the Eagles based on last week's game. So I'm not going to bump them up in my own personal power ratings to where they are in the market. And so those two things combined suggest that maybe this line should be 3.5, 4 for the road favorite, and therefore we're getting value here on the Commanders at plus 6.5. We'll see. Haven't made the bet yet because maybe it gets to 7 because people get really excited about the Eagles. Maybe they get Lane Johnson back and there's sort of a perceived bump there where we get the key number. We'll keep an eye on that one. I don't think we're going to get Jalen Carter back for this one, but again, we'll see come Saturday. Either way, right? The market seems kind of compelled to like the Eagles after that win. And I'm just not there yet, man. We're so far into the season, we've seen enough of what the Eagles are capable of. And I don't think last week was reflective of some dominant performance and some aha moment for them. So there was 3 straight losses for the Eagles.
Well, this is right after claiming to be unbiased. This is where I'm going to full on admit my bias and stick with the Eagles here, as I've been on this run where, if this moved up to 7, I'm with you. Right. And this is our season long debate of not as many 7s as we see 6.5s, not as many 3s as we see 2.5s. Right. That I'm getting suckered into again right here and taking the Eagles at the minus 6.5 on the road. Wait a second. Even as I say it, that doesn't make sense. This is a switch. Who am I kidding here? Who am I kidding here? What are we doing? This is a switch, okay?
Wait,
everything that I'm saying here is just proving I'm jumping on exactly what you said, right? To make my own argument. I'm talking myself out of my own argument. How does that make any sense?
That was electric.
Has been switched. The pick is Washington plus 6.5. And the reason being why it's Washington plus 6.5 is for all the reasons you just mentioned. Right? At the end of the day,
Thank you.
At the end of the day, if we're talking about, the Philadelphia Eagles having to cover such a big number on the road, that's a big ask. And the Raiders are really that bad. We are in fade the Raiders mode. And if we go back to what last week was one of the, I'm starting with the Raiders because they're getting the plus points, and we talk our way to the other side. This is one where I've done the opposite, but the 6.5 points, I really see that as being a 7. They're just not giving that to me. I'm seeking out the tricks that are going on this season, and I will be on the Washington Commanders. Let me just add that to my notes here so that the control room keeps track of, the switches, the picks, and all that fun stuff. But Saturday,
and it seems like a very firm 6.5, by the way, right? Like it's one of those things where it's like, well, maybe it went to 7 like in the middle of the night, and like whoever's staying up immediately like hammered the +7 to like knock it back down, and we never saw it. I don't even think that's the case. I think it's just 6.5. Like 6.5 is just 6.5. I was just kind of looking through the injury report, and again, these are estimations on Tuesday, which of course you have to then go, because it's a Saturday game, you have to think of it as like Wednesday. And you and I always talk about like nobody by this time of the year even plays, or practices on a Wednesday. So how much is this going to matter? But you do have Saquon Barkley with a stinger. Lane Johnson's obviously missed a couple of games. He was listed as a non-participant in a theoretical practice. Landon Dickerson, right? Like if you've ever bet on the Eagles in like the last like year and a half, there's always a point where they go to the sideline and one of the two interior linemen, either Cam Jurgens or Landon Dickerson, is sitting there like doing something, giving one of these with his shoulder, or like, trying to stretch something out. And you're like, I can't live this way. I can't live with the Eagles offensive line constantly in state of flux. Also, Fred Johnson, who sounds like he should be a character in a Christmas movie, is the backup tackle at either position. He is questionable as well. And I don't even think he's any good, even if he were to play. So like if there's some sort of issue with like all three of those guys, and now you're rolling with, honestly, God knows who when it comes to, an offensive line situation. Like there are dudes on here that I don't even, speaking of guys with, Christmas movie names, I've never even heard of some of these gentlemen. So, again, meanwhile, Jalen Carter, of course, still has shoulders, plural, on his injury report. Always concerning when there's a plural. You don't get the plural very often when it comes to an injury report. I can't even think of like a scenario where there's a plural, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing here too is just asking the Eagles to cover a big number against a non-Raiders team is just the biggest issue for me here, right? Like if we're being honest,
and the Commanders are functional,
and that's not saying that they can't do it. It's just which side would you want to be on? That's all.
Well,
which side have we
at
been
this point in the season?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And at this point in the season, when you really have to be convinced that the underdog that you're betting is interested in winning. And as we've mentioned with some of these teams, right, Jaden Daniels existing, even if he's not going to play, means that the Commanders are going to be engaged in winning because they don't care as much as some other teams about, wrangling a top type of draft pick to, use on a quarterback, right? It matters more to them that they win some of these games, or at least the players on the field, a bunch of veteran, largely veteran group who's honestly like, there's a handful of dudes that just might not be on NFL teams next year. And it's not because they're not capable of playing, it's because there are younger options coming up, right? Like there's an entire draft. People forget, for all of the glory and the fun of the draft and the great stories and people in living rooms and all of that sort of thing, every one of those guys, if they succeed by making a team, is taking the job of someone else. And so this is like the reverse draft, right? Like a game for the Commanders here is some of these guys going like, no, I want a job next year. I want to make sure you don't draft a linebacker in the 5th round.
Yeah.
Or an offensive lineman in the 3rd round. And like that's what these guys are playing for, right? And so from an organizational standpoint, they're still trying to win games here, whereas some of these teams are clearly not, in the case of the aforementioned Raiders, for example.
Correct. There's another game on Saturday, though. Another game on Saturdays. We got the Packers, who will be in Chicago to take on the Bears. And the Bears are favored slightly by 1.5 points. This is another Pick'em game. Packers last week went toe-to-toe with the Broncos, and not only did they lose that game, but they also lost Micah Parsons. Big injury there, huge blow to them as he's done for the season. The Bears blew out the Browns, and two things here. One, if I'm not mistaken, we were both on the Broncos last week against said Packers. And the big talk about the Bears last week and their game against the Browns, I think my quote after that one was, it was a big time spread. But if you are who you say you are, Chicago Bears, you are supposed to lay the smackdown against the Browns. And they did that.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are.
Yeah.
This game is a massive one. My lean is on the Packers here, but I feel as if like my lean might be off because I think I said last week that the Bears, I need to start believing in the Bears. That was my whole thing. My whole thing was I got to stop hating on the Bears. And then here we are 1 week later, and I'm like, Packers pick'em game on the road without Micah. This is a tough one for me, obviously. Another pick'em game. Do you have a lean one side or the other on this one, Matt?
I love that you've leaned so hard that you may just tip over. There's another situation where I got to call out the control room here. This is a pick'em game. I don't even know where we're getting Green Bay +1.5 because even over at DraftKings, it says Green Bay's a -1.5 favorite, heavily juiced on that -1.5. Or I should say you're getting plus money on that -1.5. This is like the Thursday night game. And again, this is why we have these standalone games, Thursday night, Sunday night, etc. Is that's why we drew it up, or this is how we drew it up, so that we have these pick'em games that are high leverage games. And so if you happen to have Green Bay Packers division futures, like you'd think, because it's not the last week of the season, and week 18 is the last week, and we're not even in the second to last week of the season, that in week 18, that's when we sort of tune in to like what our futures positions are when it comes to divisions and this, that, or whatever.
Yeah.
And the reality is, as you know, week 18, most of this stuff is settled.
Yeah.
That's what we signed up for when we expanded to a 17-game season, that, week 18 and in a lot of cases, week 17 no longer really matter to most of these teams. So when you have this game, a clear high leverage game where one team wins and they become a prohibitive favorite to win the division, then if you've got that ticket, or maybe you have a Bears ticket at like some really good number to win the division, this is it. This is what it's coming down to, right? So again, there's not really anything to say if you have Packers futures tickets other than evaluating the game from a purely objective, factual sort of statement, right? Whether it's because of the loss to the Broncos, which, Christian Watson gets injured in that game on a play where Patrick Surtain makes an incredible interception to give the Broncos the ball back in a scenario where they are down 9. Like, speaking of high leverage,
yeah,
that's a high leverage result in a couple of different ways, because it gives obviously the Broncos back the ball, and it really kind of neuters the Packers offense for the rest of the game. And then we get the Micah Parsons injury, which of course, next play, basically Broncos score a touchdown and off we go. And so those two injuries are really, really crucial. And we always talk about rating changes when it comes to a quarterback, being out. Parsons / Watson, and again, it seems like Watson's going to be able to, or I shouldn't say going to be able to play, that he hasn't been ruled out necessarily in the same way that obviously Parsons is. So it's either because of that injury or because of the result, and I think those two things unfortunately go hand in hand because of the nature of when things got weird and, the Packers being up 9 points in that game. The Packers rating, as we talked about last week, they've become the second choice in the entire NFL from a power rating perspective, right? The Rams are, power rated at number 1, and the Packers had become the second choice. So second choice is, usually in the low 70s, low to mid 70s. So they were rated around 72 or 73. So with this game, it's looking more like a 68 or 69 here for the Packers. So is that enough of a downgrade for a guy who everybody's telling you is obviously this impact defensive player, right? And they're like, this is like, I've heard him referred to as like the Packers superpower, is having Micah Parsons out there defensively. And so like, what does that turn into for the Bears, who, when we saw these two teams play a couple of weeks ago, the Bears were able to run the football pretty consistently. And that was the frustrating element on Caleb Williams throwing that interception on 4th and 1, beyond the fact that, there's a couple of different ways he could have converted that 4th and 1, but also they could have just kept running the ball and sort of jamming it down the Packers' throat, so to speak. So again, like, I think I'm saying it in a way that I would be certainly leaning towards the Bears here. We've talked about how the market was slow to react to the Bears. It is worth mentioning they have burst through finally their ceiling, and their rating is now in sort of the mid to high 50s. You could
Yeah.
certainly make the case that there's still some way to go there, right? And so some of these teams, use the Colts as an example for the first 8 weeks. We just saw them like slowly improving their market rating along with their results. And some of these teams are maybe sort of a little bit slower to do that. Now, it's not because of results, because the Bears have won all of these games, as we've talked about at length, over this win streak. Maybe the Bears are just that late sort of bloomer team. And again, even with all those wins, now they start to legitimize it a little bit more. So yeah, man, as somebody's holding Packers tickets, like, yeah, I'm concerned about this game, a game that otherwise, think about it, right? It was 6.5 point spread last or 2 weeks ago. You flip a 1.5 either side for home field. This line would have been like 3.5, and now we're talking about basically a pick'em game. And so, there has been an adjustment made because of the injuries to the Packers. But man, if we're talking about guys who, when it comes to Watson, opens so much stuff up for the Packers offense.
Massive.
And a defender, right? And a defender like Parsons. If those two guys are out going on the road against the Bears, who believe that they can beat the Packers based on obviously that previous matchup, yeah, like, I might have to be doing some math in here to try to figure out to kind of get out of this out of this Packers position and really more into a Bears position.
That gong you hear is the pick being switched to the Bears.
Oh boy.
The Bears is the side that I am on for this game. You, wonderfully. This is why the people show up to the pod. But the reminders of what just happened in that Bears-Packers final matchup, where they were right there. They went toe-to-toe with them. And they were right there. And now you combine that with the injuries. That's enough to make me switch. Worked for me, my friend.
Okay.
That's why the people are here.
Okay.
That's why the people listen to the pod, for the information and education. That's what we crave, man. That's what we crave. And we also crave some Sunday football action as we move on to the Buffalo Bills as 10-point favorites on the road in Cleveland, taking on the Browns. Bills rallied from 21 points down to beat the Pats. Josh Allen MVP train is back in full effect, as if it ever left. Really? As if it ever
come
left.
on.
Meanwhile, the Browns and Shador blown out by the aforementioned Bears. This simply comes down to, can the Cleveland Browns offense do anything?
Mm-hmm.
Literally do anything? Can they put up points?
Well,
my answer is I'm not really sure. I don't like laying 10 points. I don't like laying 10 points on the road. Definitely don't like doing that.
Yeah.
But the Bills, this game could be one of those, the Bills are just running the ball, trying to get it done that way, and Josh Allen putting the cape on. He did the thing last week again. I'm on the Bills. I'm going to lay the 10 points here.
Yeah, I'm concerned about this game, right? Because that, we talk about the jump and hug game, right? That was a massive game for the Bills, right? And now this is a very, you hate to sort of degrade the concept, but like, this is that like really sleepy scenario where it's next week, it's home to the Eagles.
Oof.
What if you're assuming you're winning this game, that's a game that's sort of losable, if you will, when you're trying to track down the Patriots. And with this game happening before the Sunday Night Football game involving the Patriots, there's, obviously you're not looking at the scoreboard because there's nothing to look at. Mm-hmm. And there's no scenario where you're like, well, like the Patriots won that game or are winning that game, and therefore, like, we're kind of bummed out about that or whatever, or the other way around, where if the Ravens are winning that game, you're sitting there going like, yo, like, this is now our chance to make up that game that we're missing in the standings and take this division and, have that be the sort of last piece to the puzzle, if you will, for that Josh Allen MVP campaign, all of that stuff. Right. So, because it is this sort of sleepy scenario where the one thing that the Browns theoretically can do is give the ball to Quinshon Judkins and let him run on the Bills defense, who was getting gashed to to high hell against Travion Henderson last week. Right? It's like, well, I can see the map. I can see the roadmap to the Browns getting a few scores in this game. I can
Do we have a weather update?
How, I mean, Cleveland is the weather update. You know what I mean? Lake Erie.
Listen, that was a CP3 to Blake right there. That was a CP3 to Blake.
No, but it's one of those where it's like, yeah, but if it's snowy, like I kind of like Josh Allen to be like super problematic for the other team, right? So is it going to be windy? Is it going to be snowy? Is it like, what's the deal? Like, again, Lake Erie, it's probably going to be a series of those things. But yeah, if there's a way, right, where the Browns are going to be able to score, like it's going to be with Judkins potentially setting up Sanders to have a better day. I mean, that is a roller coaster, right? Where it's like, imagine going nuts on Shedeur Sanders because he had a big game against the Tennessee Titans. And it's like, people are shocked that he had a bad game against the Bears on the road. We know that the Bills defense is, again, like pretty grim, right? They got a couple of stops in that second half. But I don't trust them to lay 10 points. Yeah, I don't. I think this could be that kind of grimy, classic, 1914 type of game that you buy sort of halftime or the third quarter. If you have different positions on the Buffalo Bills or Josh Allen specifically, I feel like I might be sitting there in the middle of the third quarter being like, can we just get a win? Like, just get that win in the win column. Like, doesn't have to be pretty. We need no style points here. Just get this win, and then we'll have a conversation about Josh Allen and the MVP potentially for next week, because maybe the Ravens will have won at home against the Patriots, and maybe is it going to get flexed? I guess there's only 2 games in the 4 o'clock window, which is Eagles and Bills next week. So they essentially have a standalone game next week, because their only other competition in that 4 o'clock window next week is Giants Raiders. So yeah, I think that there's going to be a few eyeballs on that game at 4 o'clock. So yeah, man, I would love the Bills to win, need the Bills to win. 10 points. Oof. That's a lot. That's a lot for that defense. It has nothing to do with Josh Allen. It's the defense.
The sound you hear is the gong, my friends. This sometimes late in the season, okay? Late in the season, when schedules get a little crazy, my head's a little scattered, I'm making picks, and there's so much going on. I need to remind myself sometimes of the basics, right? And what you did there, the basics of the coming off the jump and hug game, and then also just 10 points to a grimy team at home in the Cleveland Browns. I feel like I've laid this bet multiple times and won before with the Cleveland Browns getting a lot of points at home in December. Just sounds like a thing. Insert whatever team, insert whatever quarterback, minus Deshaun Watson. But you know what I mean? It's just been a thing where the Browns will figure out a way to keep this close. And, for Buffalo, just win, baby, win. Just win, baby, win. Yeah. Keep it going on Sunday's action here. This is a big time matchup in the NFC South. You got the Bucs laying 3 points on the road, taking on the Carolina Panthers. And I'm on the Panthers +3 in this game. As we go back to last week, the Bucs, I mean, things are looking grim for the Bucs these days. That loss, blowing that lead to Atlanta on Thursday night, we talked about that a bit. A very tough showing, but I think it's more so indicative of what we've seen from Tampa the last few weeks, where it's been tough. It's been a tough go for them as of late. And even when it looks like they're starting to turn things around, nope. Nope. It's tough going. But also, this is also just how this division goes every year, I feel like, right? This division is a gong show year in and year out. So why am I on the Panthers?
Yeah.
Basically, the Panthers at home, for whatever reason, seem to play a bit better. And I'm getting points with the home dog against a team that's struggling. And even though the Bucs are getting healthier, I still need to see them actually do it on the field. So give me the Bucs. Give me the Panthers. I will take the 3 points with the Panthers at home.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because it's two teams, 7-7, and obviously that's 500. But the route to which they've gotten here is considerably different. Whereas where the Panthers are win one, lose one, win one, lose one, win one, lose one, where
Very
you're
mid,
never,
as the kids would say.
yeah, and are rated as such. Like they still hold a rating of 32 out of 100, which is going to be hilarious if and when they host a home playoff game, if and when they win this division, because it's going to be like, how many points are they getting at home in the first round of the playoffs?
So insane.
But they are this sort of interesting team because they've beaten the Rams and they've beaten the Packers, and they've, you're like, what? And it's like, yeah, we also have 2 losses to the Saints. You're like, are you kidding me with this?
Yeah.
So, they're kind of doing it off and on and off and on, which is never going to be respected in the betting market, right? Because we've seen what is required to get respect in the betting market. Like you need to win a bunch of games in a row, whether that's Colts at the start of the season, the Bears, that we talked about, or so on and so forth. And so when you just never do that, and then a lot of the times when you're losing, you're either getting blown out by a team like the Bills, or you're losing to the Saints, seemingly every second week. You're just never going to get that respect. But the high end, I think we talked about this last week, right? Like the Panthers are either going to play at a 20 or they're going to play at like a 60. And so like, yeah, we're trying to sort of figure out that their average rating here is a 32, but like, when are they ever actually going to play to that, right? Because they either, cover relatively comfortably or don't cover relatively comfortably. So, the point is like their back and forth has sort of made it kind of difficult for anybody to kind of rate them. The Buccaneers, on the other hand, got all their wins at the start of the season, right? It was like, 5-1, 5-2, et cetera, right? So like they got the 7-7 by basically just stinking up the joint for the last 2 months. Like they got a win against the Saints in New Orleans that we've talked about when they had like 200 total yards in that game. And, again, you're watching it and Spencer Rattler's throwing interceptions and the Saints are fumbling at an alarming rate. And it's sort of you just look at it and go, oh, the stupid Saints are doing stupid Saints stuff. But then they face them at home and the Saints just win the game outright. And, we got into the position that we needed to get into, as we referenced earlier last week, where, when you and I talked about it, I'm pretty sure it was -4. All those guys came back. The line went to -5.5, even some -6. Yep. So you're beating the market. Then you watch the game, and each one of those guys is contributing, right? Wirfs is playing, fine. Evans is involved, right? Baker's trying to get him killed on a couple of these throws because, speaking of injuries, right? It's one thing that these guys come back and are healthy and are good to be able to play. If the quarterback needs to like almost take like he almost needs to crow hop into his throws because he's so like, injured or whatever, like that's really problematic, and it's going to hurt his accuracy, and it's also going to telegraph his passes because it's taking him longer to throw these passes. And that's what happened on that interception. It's a bad read and it's a telegraphed throw, and it's something that they had been doing all game long, and the Falcons took advantage of that. But the point is like, yeah, we got to where we needed to get. We got a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter that even once the other team scores that touchdown and goes for 2, even if they get the 2-point conversion, you're still covering the game and you should be able to run out the clock or be able to score again on the Falcons. And the Buccaneers couldn't do it. And then that puts it to their defense, who immediately give up a touchdown and then immediately give up the drive for the field goal without really much effort or, putting up any kind of a wall. Right. So, now you're going on the road against this Panthers team that, like, again, sometimes they show up and sometimes they don't. They lost that game last week, but like the Saints played pretty well in that game.
Yeah, no, the Saints.
We'll talk about it, right?
We're on the Saints.
Yeah,
listen,
like
the Saints were doing it.
Yeah, and as much as I wanted the Panthers to win the game for, as you mentioned, futures on the Panthers, because we just kind of assume at the start of every year that the winner of this division is going to be 9-8. And if that's the bar that you need to get to, any team can get to 9-8 if things go their way, right? And so maybe the Panthers get to 9-8. And that was the sort of premise. And so in this case, it's not going to be sort of worried about that futures ticket. That futures ticket is sort of a bonus. That futures ticket is something of a money line type of thing where it's like, yeah, I'm betting on this team to cover, but if they win, it's going to be an added sort of bonus here. I think they do win. I think this Panthers team is just super weird and like goes back and forth on sort of being able to play really well. And I really didn't think that they played all that badly last week. And therefore, again, maybe that means that they do play badly because they blew their opportunity when they played okay. But no, I think that this Buccaneers team, again, the last 8 games that we're talking about here, just wildly unimpressive. Your guy Todd Bowles is just losing it in sort of the most way that Bowles can, where it's just like, yeah, I'm still going to speak in a monotone, but I'm going to swear every second word, and therefore it's going to be extra weird. Again, you got all these guys back, but like, what are you doing with them? And we've sort of had circled the Bucs defense as a thing that's kind of been aging over the course of the last couple of years. So it's like not all that surprising that their Bucs defensive metrics this season are god awful. And anytime Bryce Young gets to play against a god awful defense, it usually goes pretty well. So yeah, man, I'm gonna take the Panthers here at home, and if they can get this win, then you can sort of circle Week 18 as another interesting game, which, depending on how things go, we might not have that many interesting games in Week 18.
Yeah, I mean, this is a vision. It's what they do. It's what they do. Speaking of what they do, I don't know what the Cowboys do other than their defense has gone back to being doo-doo. That was a bar on the fly. But anyways, the Cowboys, like, what a disappointment. A horrible performance on Sunday Night Football against the Vikings. And, their defense is mentioned back to, like, they had 2 weeks where we're like, oh, maybe the Cowboys defense has figured some stuff out. It's like,
and one of those is against the Raiders, right?
All right, exactly. But either way, they're facing the Chargers, who are 2.5-point underdogs. I swear I wrote this out and then stared at it again because I was like, wait, the Cowboys are favored in this game? Like, which we'll get to in the breakdown. But the Chargers slayed the dragon that is the Kansas City Chiefs. A huge win for them last week. The Chiefs are cooked, eliminated from the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes is done for the season. It was a weird game. It was an ugly game, but the Chargers figured out a way to finally beat the Chiefs and end this run anyways. Maybe I'm just riding high, and that's why I'm looking at this line. And I'm like, well, of course I'm on the Chargers plus the 2.5 points here. Like, I don't know what it is, but this just seems like something's up here because I looked and I was like, wait, am I sure the Chargers aren't favored here against the Cowboys? Like, am I missing something? What's going on here? Yeah. And when that happens, my radar is automatically up because I'm like, what is going on here, Matt? Am I missing something? What am I missing?
Yeah, well, okay, so you mentioned the Vikings, right? And I think this is, you have to hang around with me here a little bit here, but like we saw earlier this season, it was a Thursday night. The Vikings went to LA. LA won and covered a game where I believe the Chargers were about a 3-point favorite.
Yes.
Last week, basically the same Vikings team. The difference being McCarthy was in for Wentz, goes to Dallas. And again, I think everybody has basically the same opinion of the Vikings now as we did then. The Cowboys were minus 6.5 in that game. Got back down to like 5.5, right? And so what is that? That's a 2 to 3 point difference from, comparing the Chargers to the Vikings and the Cowboys to the Vikings. So just on a market basis alone, we obviously talk about market ratings and, out of 100 and all of that sort of thing. But just on a comparison basis, you can see that like there's respect for the Cowboys to the degree that they were favored by that much against the Vikings. Now you can sit there and go, yeah, but they lost the game. They lost their last 2 games, and they are out of the playoffs, essentially, right? It was like one, Collins were talking about 1% chance last week. It's like, yeah, if you have a 1% chance of something, you have basically a 0% chance of something. The thing is that people are interested in the Chargers because of the 2 wins that they just had against the Eagles. You also have to remember from a market perspective, as little hope as we sort of all had for the Chiefs, they went from minus 4.5 when you and I talked about it last Wednesday to minus 6. And I don't think that was because of the Chiefs. I think it was because, as we talked about it, it was because the Chargers had sort of fluked their way into a win against the Eagles by withstanding 7 sacks and having Jalen Hurts turning all of the balls over. And so then we get the Chiefs game last week, and there's 2 minutes to go in the first half, and Justin Herbert's got 30 passing yards, I think. And he says, screw it, and he fires one down the sideline to one of his rookie receivers. I believe he's a rookie, maybe second-year guy. Hauls it in, 2 feet down, got it. Couple plays later, another rookie, Lambert Smith, I believe Georgia guy, back of the end zone, kind of juggling it, but like we're all kind of okay with it. He gets the 2 feet down and it's a touchdown. And the Chiefs go from being up 13-3, I believe it was, to up 13-10. And you sort of go like, uh-oh, right? Because the Chiefs just ain't scoring all that much, right? And so again, either of those get, incomplete in whatever way that they needed to get incomplete. And you're looking at the Chargers probably losing that game. Here, you're getting the Undertaker music from the Chiefs. The universe changes ever so slightly, and Patrick Mahomes doesn't have to try to make that play on the sideline, and he doesn't blow out his knee.
Yep.
You can also just assign sort of blame to Mahomes throwing the interception, really pretty needless interception down 3 points, which is not the first time that he's done that all season long, by the way. Mm-hmm. And you could even then go, obviously, the knee injury is at a time where there's 3 or 4 more offensive plays that they can run, and they're on the brink of field goal range to push that game to overtime to potentially beat the Chargers in overtime. And again, we would have Undertaker, GIF, music, whatever for the Chiefs. But the universe is the way that it is, and it certainly goes this sort of way for the Chiefs this season, where you can go and pick out any game you want. Broncos game with the interception that Mahomes throws. Obviously, the Texans game with 4th and 1s and guys dropping passes. Every single game, basically, that they've lost, because that's what the deal has been, right? They've lost all these close games. So I realize I'm sort of sounding like I'm talking about the Chiefs, but really I'm talking about the Chargers, who are getting credit for beating the Eagles, because now the Eagles, look at the Eagles market rating after pummeling the Raiders. And they're getting credit for winning against the Chiefs, where it's like, man, they really made 2 plays offensively in that game, and then just kind of like, made a couple of kicks. And so now you go to Dallas here, and nobody can believe that the Chargers it seems like nobody can believe that the Chargers are underdogs here. And yet the line that opened -2 has gone up to -2.5. So again, like maybe the market just keeps getting this wrong, right? Like moving the line towards the Eagles in the game, and that didn't work. And then moving the line towards the Chiefs in that game, and that didn't work, because Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers are pulling off all of this stuff. And so the issue is, and it's, again, back to the Vikings, is, was that a J.J. McCarthy thing, or was that a Kevin O'Connell thing? Because what he said before the game was, if we block up these guys, if we block up the Cowboys, we're going to win this game. Which is like kind of a ballsy thing to say for a team that was a 6-point underdog.
Yeah.
And they blocked up the Cowboys. And McCarthy had time. And for some reason, he's only capable of connecting with everybody other than Justin Jefferson, which is this incredibly bizarre circumstance. But the point is like there are guys sort of running, sort of through. Last week still didn't really show me that the Chargers can block anybody.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing that they're pulling off these games. It's unbelievable that they just won those 2 games in 6 days without being able to block anybody. And so, does the Cowboys qualify as anybody? Like, I think that defensive line and that defensive front is actually pretty good. It's the secondary that's an absolute train wreck.
Yeah.
And, again, then you go to the offensive side of the ball, right? Where it's like, well, we talked about Jalen Hurts turning the ball over 8 trillion times. And like, if you hadn't paid attention to the Chiefs offense all season long, like it's been weirdly grim all season long. Cowboys offense isn't grim. Right? No. The Cowboys, I think, are going to be able to score on the Chargers defense that, again, is probably underrated because of, A, their metrics are better than people sort of think, but also, like, they've faced some kind of high-quality, good reputation teams whose offenses haven't been nearly the offense that the Cowboys have put together this season. Yeah. By the way, the Cowboys beat those 2 teams, too, recently in beating the Eagles and the Chiefs, right? So I actually really like the Cowboys in this game because honestly, it doesn't seem to really matter from like a motivational, are they in this or are they not? Because like they could be super involved in the playoff picture and like George Pickens could still be waltzing around out there, not really doing all that much. And so like, because that they're, they're out of the playoffs, doesn't really suggest to me that like Pickens wouldn't necessarily try, right? Like, and just sort of using him as an example,
yeah.
Like that's just kind of how weird the Cowboys are, man. And like they have the talent to do it. They have the front to be able to dominate the Chargers as these other teams have. And then it just kind of comes down to like turnover luck. and the Chargers being able to just catch it seemingly every ball that's kind of just come their way. Like none of those DBs are dropping any of these interceptions. DBs drop interceptions all the time. And so like maybe there's an interception or two to drop here, or Dak Prescott, who has played better than Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts this season, doesn't throw the same interceptions that those two guys did, which cost those two games for their respective teams. So yeah, man, I really like the Cowboys this week, which, I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
That sound you hear, my friend.
He did it.
Because here's the beauty of this pod, okay? The people come here for the context, right? The context of what these things mean. You know, there's games and you watch the games. Well, I shouldn't even say that. People watch the highlights, but you come here to get the context of the games.
Mhm.
And so the context of what actually happened to the Chargers, what's been going on with the Chargers, you know, or more so, as you just laid out perfectly, what's been going on with the teams the Chargers have been playing, right? Plays a role in how we view this game. And I also think the Cowboys were the victims of a much more buttoned up Vikings team coming off the bye. Like, it's their second week from the bye, but since their bye, the Vikings have been a much better buttoned up operation.
Since JJ McCarthy missed the game.
They put him back in. Sorry, it wasn't their bye. They put JJ McCarthy back in. Sorry. That's what I meant. Since McCarthy came back in, and it was kind of like, wait, we're back with McCarthy here? Like, what's going on? He has looked a lot better. And I think that your point you made about it not being so much about JJ McCarthy, but more so about O'Connell, their coach, just rings true. My friend. That's one of those things where I know it's coaching, but I call those things sometimes the institutional, you know? Yeah. One of those there. We keep it going though here as we got the Chiefs. Jeez. The aforementioned Chiefs who are in Tennessee to take on the Tennessee Titans. And the Chiefs are laying 3.5 points, despite the fact that it is the Gardner Minshew Kansas City Chiefs laying 3.5 points in Tennessee against the Titans. And the Chiefs are eliminated from the playoffs, as we just mentioned. My biggest question is, what version of the Chiefs do we see here with Gardner Minshew? Because the problem for the Chiefs, I want to say for the better part of a year and a half, is they didn't really have much offensively outside of, hey, Mahomes, go do stuff. Right? Like they had this, they didn't have the same level of trick plays that worked that we've seen year in and year out from Andy Reid teams of the past. And so now if you remove that element and now you replace that with Gardner Minshew, you don't really want to be in, they're not going to be in the Gardner Minshew go do stuff mode. So how am I laying 3.5 points on the road with Gardner Minshew? That is a tough place to be. I kind of need to see where Andy Reid's mindset is, where Kelsey's mindset is, where the rest of this team's mindset is, as Chris Jones didn't know in the post game last week that they were officially eliminated from the playoffs after that loss. So what kind of team are we seeing from the Kansas City Chiefs going forward? I don't know, but it's not one where I want to be laying 3.5 points with on the road, literally against anybody, because I would qualify the Titans as being anybody. But the Titans do stuff, right? They put points on the board. They do stuff.
They're out there doing stuff.
They're doing stuff.
The Chris Jones thing is funny. 3.5. Sorry, the Chris Jones thing is funny because it's like, normally that happens when like there's another team that like needs to win. You know what I mean? For you to get like knocked out. But like the other team that needed to win was the Chargers. And it's like you were just out there. Like you're just out there with them.
How did you not know?
Yeah, you're like, it's like, did the Chargers win? Like, yeah, they were. You just played them. You just lost them. What are you talking about? Like, that's the combination. And like that was the good thing for you, that you could just beat that team and you'd still be alive. And like you just did not do it. Okay, it's not apples to apples.
Okay.
Anytime the Chiefs have played like a week 18 game, or it hasn't really mattered because the playoffs are coming down the stretch and Again, it's not apples to apples because a lot of that means, okay, we're playing backups, right? Like Travis Kelce's not going to play. I think last year was Carson Wentz in Denver, right?
I think you're right. Yeah.
They get smoked they get smoked. And so I don't know if that's just going to be the case for the next 3 games where it's just like, and honestly, you could do the thing where it's like, well, the Chiefs are like a pretty smart franchise that if they just tanked it out the rest of the way and won 6 games this season, we're talking about, I don't know, like around a top 10 draft pick.
Yeah.
And if the thing that people are looking around on the Chiefs and going like, you need to replace some high-end talent here. I don't know if that means like literally drafting a tight end to replace Travis Kelce or, whatever that might mean. Maybe that means like, how would Jeremiah Love look on the Chiefs?
Yeah.
Right. And if they're the 11th pick, then like you can probably get Jeremiah Love at the 11th pick. If you're at like 17, 18, 19, 20, then it's going to be a little bit, tougher to do. So if you're as smart an organization as like in theory the Chiefs are, then like they should want absolutely nothing to do with winning any of these games. And honestly, it should look a lot like week 18s of years past. And even if that means that Travis Kelce's still out there running around, Travis Kelce is basically right now the quality of whomever the backup to Travis Kelce would have been in those other games, right? Like Travis Kelce is basically Noah Gray right now. And so it's like, well, if Travis Kelce plays, I'm not going to be like, Travis Kelce's playing. I would be furious if all of the receivers started catching the passes from Gardner Minshew and like the offense starts to look like goodish and like they can convert in the red zone. Like that would drive me insane because of how poor it's been, as you mentioned, like even with Mahomes. And so I realized, like, from a market perspective, right? Like, we have to talk about this as everybody's fastest growing game show, Shell. Like, knowing that with Patrick Mahomes towards the end there, even with the fact that they were losing a bunch of games, they were still rated in the mid to high 60s, right? It is why that line got up to 5.5, 6 against the Chargers. So you know what's coming next. What, with Gardner Minshew, how should the Chiefs be rated out of 100 with Gardner bleeping Minshew and the rest of this cast of characters? And I will sort of mention depth chart, kind of looking at like injury report type of deal. We got Rashee Rice, who seems to be getting blown up on a weekly basis. Is he even going to bother to play? The offensive line injuries, like we're at a point here where, because Josh Simmons is on IR, Asa Pole, the guy who like they basically pulled off the Jets practice squad, is just the starting left tackle now. Like he's not even like, is he going to play because this other guy's injured? He's just good to go, I guess. And on the other side, on the right side, you got Trey Smith and Juwan Taylor questionable. Juwan Taylor, famous for constantly false starting and lining up incorrectly, which is hilarious in and of itself. Yeah. And then defensively, Leo Chanel and Trent McDuffie are also questionable as well. So that being said, again, independent of who they are playing this week, what rating would you give this Chiefs team, knowing everything that we know about their general situation, or honestly lack thereof having a situation?
42.
42. Okay, so the
comp
to them
off a cliff. They're falling off a cliff.
Fair, totally fair. They're that comp is they're basically the Atlanta Falcons right now.
This is so funny you're saying this right now, but yeah, go on.
Neutral field, Kirk Cousins, the Atlanta Falcons, I guess with Drake London.
Okay.
We'll talk about that game in a little bit. Versus Gardner Minshew and the Chiefs in a meaningless game. You think that's a pick 'em, or would you have one of those two teams favored? Neutral in like the world's crappiest Super Bowl. In the salute to veterans.
I like that as a pick 'em. Yeah.
You like that as a pick 'em? Okay.
I just think right now the Chiefs and what Mahomes was doing. Mahomes is just running for his life every single week.
Yeah.
And like nothing going on. And so how's that going to be better with Gardner Minshew? They have no running game, right? And so like what? They're magically going to get a running game now? Mahomes has been begging for a running game for like 2 years.
So neutral site, you have them favored over let's see here. You have them favored over the Commanders with Marcus Mariota, current version.
Ooh, see, that's a close one. That's a close one too. Yeah.
You have them favored. You have them pick them with Phil Rivers and the Colts.
You're listing all these guys because my fantasy league right now, the 2 quarterback league that I'm in, my big buddy pool, I have Mahomes as my 1 quarterback.
Yeah, We promised we weren't going to talk about fantasy until the end. Just kidding. Shell, the Chiefs right now, I don't have a problem with your rating of the Chiefs because it's too low. The market and I have a problem with your rating of the Chiefs because it's too high. The betting market has them at 35 right now.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I'm okay
and
with
honestly,
35.
I kind of think that's I kind of think that's just a little too high still because again, like what if they weren't wearing Chiefs uniforms and Chiefs helmets, like what would we be hanging on to here?
It's true.
If they were wearing Raiders gear and Gardner Minshew, was still on the Raiders and he was throwing to this cast of characters, like I'm not gonna say it's like the Brady Cook Jets or even the actual Raiders, but like I don't know that I have them favored on a neutral field against like the Saints or the Panthers or the Giants.
No.
Right. And so like that's where this rating is, where they're still kind of favored, by like a point or so against those teams. And again, it's either going to be this, I'm not going to say gold mine or whatever, but like it's either going to just be this situation for 3 weeks where it's so bad, it's so unintentional. And again, part of it's going to matter like who they play and what the point spread is. But contextually, now when we bring in the Titans into this, we're talking about laying points with the Chiefs
on the road
and not knowing what not knowing what we're going to get from this team. So it's one thing if, like, let's say this, like using this rating, Kansas City they play Vegas in Week 18, which again pretty hilarious because again this rating would make them a favorite against Vegas. They have a toughish game. It's Denver, Denver on Christmas. Right. And so this rating and the look ahead line for this is 5.5. It's 5.5 right now for Denver at Kansas City for the Christmas game.
Why am I not betting all the money on that right now?
Right. And so, you're not going to because like you're a responsible bettor. You're probably going to have a small bet on that right now. But the point is like if you remove the Titans part of it, you can then sort of spell out, like the Chiefs are still kind of overrated on what you think is going to happen next week. Mm-hmm. Well, therefore they have to be overrated now because it's the same rating, right? It's literally a rating. So and we get this opportunity to not just bet them against the point spread, not just potentially get a +3.5, available in some spots with a little bit of juice, but also being able to just bet them to lose the game, something that fundamentally helps their case going forward next season, which again, if you're a smart organization, you find a way to do that. Now, they might not have to find a way to do that when it's Gardner Minshew handing the ball to Kareem Hunt back there or Isaiah Pacheco against a makeshift offensive line that, like, I think, again, if you're a smart organization, you list Rashee Rice is questionable, Trey Smith is questionable, Jawan Taylor is questionable. Yeah. But you don't play those guys. And you say, hey, Mike Caliendo, who I thought was the guy who does the impressions, you say, you go play right guard this week. Or, Jalen Moore is questionable, so it's not, potentially wouldn't be him. Like, you pull guys off of the street to play offensive line, to play cornerback, to play, strong side linebacker, right? Like, you don't need to play these guys who are all questionable. No one would blame you if you didn't. But the problem is, or sort of the good news for us is, people have such little respect for the Titans that like they're not going to be made a favorite until we see what happens on the field. But if we kind of think that what happens on the field here is that the Chiefs aren't going to be particularly good, get an opportunity here on an underdog, potentially on the money line.
I like it. I like it a lot. Tennessee Titans. +3.5. Let's go. We keep things going here. We move on to the aforementioned Minnesota Vikings, who are 3-point road favorites against the New York Football Giants. I'm on the Vikings here, and this is pretty simple here. This will be pretty quick for me, actually. We just talked about the buttoned-up operation that the Vikings have been laying out here for Mr. J.J. McCarthy the last couple weeks. And if there's something that I would use to describe the New York Giants just as a full-on operation, as a crew, as a whole concept, it's not buttoned up. at all.
Right.
Yeah, normally I'd be, tempted to lean with the home dogs here, but this is the trap. They want me to be leaning on the home dog here, and I'm not
It's just
falling
a
for it
trap.
here. I'm not falling for it. Give me the Vikings. I will lay the 3 points on the road with the Vikings, who we already know their defense is about that work, whereas the Giants and Jackson Dart, like he's just going to be wilding and running around and doing Jackson Dart stuff, which isn't always positive. So give me the Minnesota Vikings here. I'll lay the 3 points on the road.
I think that if there's a trap, right, and again, like there isn't such thing as a trap. There is an overreaction to what we most recently saw, and therefore, if that reaction isn't commensurate with the line, and you can sort of envision a scenario where it's easy for the Vikings to cover a point spread, i.e., it's this low, and you ignore the way that we do things. And you ignore that, like, I'm going to tell you that the Vikings went from low 40s in their market rating to high 40s in their market rating, which is obviously a significant jump. And meanwhile, the Giants, who, again, we pegged that last week as far as like, wait, why are the Giants favored? Like, and it was the most basic one ever, because it's like, just look at the look ahead line where they were 2.5 point underdogs. Now all of a sudden they're 2.5 point favorites, because, by the way, the Commanders lost to the Vikings. And as you know, Shell, the NFL does not work. Yes, because A beats B and B beats C, that A is automatically better than C. That is just not how it works, especially when the point spread then gets involved and goes, not only do I not, I don't just need you to win, I need you to win by more than 3 points. That complicates everything further, right? And so the Giants' market rating still below their sort of pre-season range, because they just always lose these games, that you and I talked about. What really complicates this is just the general idea that, like, the Giants shouldn't really want to win games anyway, and we mentioned obviously last year, screwing that up. But if you watch them play last week, like, they're still efforting. They don't have a laundry list of questionable guys. Kayvon Thibodeau on the defense is questionable. Raheem Nunez-Rocha is questionable. The offense is pretty clean, outside of obviously the guys who are on IR from earlier this season. At some point, maybe you shut down Andrew Thomas for the season, because, as we've talked about a million times, right, their left tackle is the most important player on that offense. Again, you're just, for lack of a better sort of explanation, you're just supposed to bet on the Giants in this game. Like, the rating for them is so far below what it's supposed to be, and the adjustments made. Listen, we've had a nice time with the Vikings, right? Cruise job 2 weeks ago. From a cover perspective, and listen, they won outright, like a pretty cruisy job this past week. We're having a great time. Does that mean that the Vikings, through the last half of this, or the last 5 games of this season, are going to be playing like an above average team? If that's the case, then, like, yeah, the Vikings can win and cover this game. And if the Giants have no interest in winning this game, sort of fundamentally, then yeah, they will sort of let the Vikings win and cover this game. So it's not some like great thing that it's like, oh, we have to be betting the Giants. This is the deal of the century. This is more just like everything we know about a market, and the buying that's happening with the Vikings and the selling that's happening with the Giants, and that very basic ABC thing that just never seems to really work out. It just sort of tells you, that's what I mean by, like, you're just supposed to bet on the Giants here +3. But again, if you think the Vikings and JJ McCarthy and Kevin O'Connell, like, they're all just kind of like good to go and really finish this season strong and do the thing. I mean, like, motivations, right? Like, one of their motivations is to make JJ McCarthy feel as good as he possibly can.
Correct.
For those last 3 games, right? And Chris Collinsworth talked about challenging him, right, with some plays, or it's like 3rd and long. We're not just going to check it down. We're going to actually challenge you to make a play here so that we know what we have. But it's also to finish this season really well. And so, like, the guys on defense are playing pretty well. And, listen, the Vikings are going to be able to run the ball here, because everybody runs the ball against the Giants. So listen, I'm not going to jump in front of it when it comes to, like, no, you can't take the Vikings here. I'm just telling you that, like, technically we're supposed to be taking the Giants. But, like, that could also be better applied to, like, week 4.
Yeah,
versus
yeah,
like
yeah,
week
yeah.
16, where some of these sort of rules and regulations, if you will, kind of go by the wayside because of the foolishness that goes on with regards to some of these games.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. And I'm just not going to be in a race to everything you just laid out is perfect, right? Like just not in a race to quickly switch a pick to Jackson Dart and the Giants when who knows what the Giants are actually trying to do towards the end of this season. Whereas we know the Vikings and JJ McCarthy there's an investment there in which they need to continue to show some strides here. Keep it going though. We will move on to
100%.
the New Orleans Saints. Don't know why it took me a while to spit that out. New Orleans Saints are laying 4.5 points at home to the New York Jets. Jets got blown out by the Jags last week. Your man's Brady Cook didn't get cooked. He did some stuff late in garbage time. He did some stuff. He was out there. But this is about the Saints. I can't believe I'm here in a world where I'm going to be saying I'm laying 4.5 points with the New Orleans Saints against anybody. This is a weird one for me. I can't believe I'm doing this, but here we are. I just think the Saints you just spent time talking about just how, we viewed teams for the whole season, but where is this team actually right now? And I feel like where the Saints are right now, they're pretty decent. I was about to say pretty good, but that might be a little too far. But they're pretty decent. Like they're okay. Do you know what I mean? Like they're serviceable. Yeah. They're a pretty decent team, right? So I'm trying to not be afraid of the 4.5 points, or more so frame the 4.5 points through the lens of how bad the Jets are. And the Jets, I don't know if they're trying to win, and if they are, they're not doing a good job. They haven't been doing a good job. But anyways, laying the 4.5 points with the Saints. Let's go.
Yeah. And so that's where we get into that whole conversation about like, what's your motivation, et cetera, right? Because it's one thing to be able to look at last week, the Panthers -2.5 on the road against the Saints and going like, the Panthers are favored, everybody run for the hills. Mm-hmm. I would have preferred, as weird as it sounds, like I would have liked the Panthers' chances if they were +2.5 more than I like them being -2.5. I don't know why. That doesn't sort of make rational sense necessarily, but like, it's just because you're sort of obligated to make that bet. And so you have to decide whether the Saints sort of fall in that category where we saw against the Falcons earlier this year, 3 weeks ago, where it was like, because we're feeling pretty good about the Saints because ironically, I believe they had just beaten the Panthers. That is like, at home against like a bad team, like this could like work okay. The Jets obviously get embarrassed last week. They fire the defensive coordinator, Steve Wilks. Can't believe an operation run by Steve Wilks didn't go well.
No comment.
You mentioned like Brady Cook, right? Maybe Tyrod Taylor's back. Maybe Justin Fields is good to go. Or maybe like Brady Cook isn't necessarily all that bad. And you have to sort of, 22 out of 33 last week, 3 interceptions. The turnovers are what's going to get you. But like he's running around. He's running for like 30-something yards last week. Mm-hmm. The defense has to get better. And you have to trust Brady Cook to cover a point spread for a team that, like, again, who's the quarterback next year, right? That gets answered awfully quickly if they just lose the rest of their games. Yeah, right? They can just go find one. They just go find one in the draft because it's not on the roster. It's not Justin Fields. It's not Brady Cook, and it's not Tyrod Taylor. So again, if you're going to bet on the Jets, which like you're supposed to do because you're not supposed to be laying 4.5 points with the Saints, again, this is an easier bet to make in week 4. And I'm sure like you can go back through the histories of this podcast and go to like week 16 and like there's 2 or 3 games where I just go, well, you're supposed to do this.
Yeah.
But the reality is because we're in mid to late December and the finish line is so obviously there and what you can sort of do here. God, look at, man, what if the Titans win that game against the Chiefs? Now all of a sudden that's 3 wins for the Titans this year. And now if you're the Jets, you're going, wow, our 3 wins now all of a sudden like might be good. It's like playing poker. Like my 2 pair here might just be good. Like we might just find our way into being the last place team in the league. So and of course, obviously it's hilarious that these 2 New York teams are kind of battling out for that. So yeah, like you can get excited about laying points with the Saints, but like that feels like something that you're going to regret. But at the same time, we're going to regret not fading all of these teams that are seemingly pretty content with just getting blown out all the way home here. So, we're talking about 34-10 to Miami 2 weeks ago and 48-20 for the Jags or against the Jags. Like,
Yeah.
you could tell me the Jets lose this thing by 2 touchdowns, I would totally believe you. But again, fundamentally, like laying points at the Saints, grim.
Tough world. It's a tough world. I mean, this is where we're at
Yeah.
now. At this point of the season, there are no easy games to be picking, and I'm going to be in tough spots here. I'm not going to lie to you, because we're going from one tough spot in terms of laying points to another. The Bengals laying 5.5 points on the road against the Dolphins, and a very uninspiring performance last week from said Bengals, where it's just like, talk about no showing against the Ravens at home. You get shut out. I don't even know how that happened. The Ravens have shown us literally, well, not literally. They've haven't shown much this season. And so then for you to come out at home and get blanked with the offensive weapons that you have, if you're the Bengals, I mean, just a tough go. And now here I am laying 5.5 points with them the very next week.
Yeah.
Which means they're facing the Dolphins.
So,
and here's my thing that I'm going to say, though. The Dolphins are in such a position where they are finally questioning whether or not they should bench Tua.
They're no longer questioning it, my friend.
Oh,
what do you
breaking news.
How do you think we got here? Yeah, right before the pod started. Quinn Ewers.
Hold on. So it's not even Zach Wilson?
Wow. It's not even Zach Wilson. Yeah.
Oh, man. Life is good for Zach Wilson, eh? Damn. Yeah, I'm on the Bengals. I'm on the Bengals here.
So the problem is, right, you mentioned how do you lose that game last week, and how do you lose that game in such a way? And Joe Burrow, before the game, says he's not having fun.
Oof. That's not good.
That's not what people say, right? Maybe they do it in the NBA. They don't do it in the NFL, because you got to go out there and you got to play your ass off just to not die in the NFL, basically, is how the NFL works. And then he goes and he plays that game and he says, there wasn't a team in the NFL that would have won a game with me at the quarterback position today, which is saying how bad that he played. And you go back and you watch, you can go back and watch the game and go it took a while for the Ravens to score. And I believe that game was 7-0 towards the end of the first half, and then the Ravens get a late touchdown. They end up getting a 98-yard interception return. So you're laying. So what you're asking here, not you specifically, but the universe is asking us to lay points with a guy who is, if he's engaged, is awesome. But if he's not, for whatever reason that is. And maybe that's sort of wanting to exit Cincinnati, which on the surface is fine. Who wouldn't want to leave that? But the problem is you also signed Cincinnati up for the 2 receivers that they paid a ton of money for, because essentially you were no, I need my guys here to throw to. And if you're just going to bounce, I do have a problem with that. Now, again, nobody's really asking me for that take per se. You're asking me who you're supposed to bet on in this game.
Yeah.
So how high can you rate the Bengals in all of this? And, I think they're rated fairly high, because next week they're lined as 5.5 point home favorites against the Cardinals. Now, again, the Cardinals aren't good, but you're still a favorite. And by the way, you're also a favorite now at 5.5 points on the road against the Dolphins. The Quinn Ewers thing is obviously the game changer here, because this look-ahead line for this game was a pick-em. The Dolphins get, sort of dominated pretty significantly. And part of that, speaking of Mike McDaniel, making coaching decisions, red flag immediately anytime you turn on a game. And just as you tune in, they go, oh yeah, the coach, they won the coin toss, but he wants the ball first. No. And it's that's just not what you do. You want extra possessions. You want to open up the possibility that you get the last possession of the first half and the first possession of the last possession of the first half and the first possession of the second half. because that's effectively a turnover, right? The defense is working so hard to give you essentially 2 straight possessions, and you're just declining the possibility of that right off the hop. And so when they're in that game and it's 3-0 with 5 minutes to go in the first half, you're fine. Except Steelers score a touchdown to end the first half, and they score a touchdown to start the second half, and the game is basically over at 14-3. And so, yes, they exchange touchdowns, and there's a couple of Darren Waller touchdowns at the end of the game, and it's all very sort of cosmetic. But the problem is the coach isn't giving you an opportunity to win that game, or your best opportunity to win that game. The Quinn Ewers decision is an interesting one because, one, it just is probably like, well, Zach Wilson is who we thought Zach Wilson is. And, they're going to say Quinn Ewers has performed well in practice and, shown us stuff and yada, yada, yada. The good news for Quinn Ewers is twofold. One, he played a ton in college.
Yep.
Right? He played more than Zach Wilson, I believe, played in college. So he's got all of that. And it wasn't that long ago. It was literally a year ago where he was in the semifinal of the college football playoff.
Yep.
And the other thing is he's replacing a quarterback whose arm strength is god awful. And so it's not like, oh man, like these throws that Tua was making, like Quinn Ewers can't make. And he was doing so in an offense where Mike McDaniel had already, over the course of the previous 4 games, sheltered Tua. Yeah. He was down to 21, on average, 21 pass attempts per game. Mm-hmm. For a 4th, 5th year quarterback who was drafted in the top 10, who people, morons, were debating whether he or Justin Herbert was better. This is like, side note, this is the competition that we're dealing with when it comes to the betting market, is people who watch Tua Tagovailoa play and Justin Herbert and we're like, I don't know, I think I like Tua. And it's like, ooh, grim. So like you should probably not allowed to have a betting account or any sort of social media account or really be able to walk around amongst us as human beings. And so the point is that like it's not like how much of a downgrade could this possibly be if you didn't really like your quarterback to do stuff in the first place, and that your entire sort of deal has been creative run plays, right? We got a couple of running backs in there. There's a bunch of motions and misdirections and Devon Achane and all of that sort of thing. Yeah. And listen, I'll go to my grave saying that the Dolphins didn't lose on Monday night because it was cold. I will say that their head coach quarterback combination just ain't it. And then it's hilarious that they're pretty much committed to them, those 2 guys, for next season as well.
It is.
And so the coach isn't going to fire himself. He's not going to bench himself. And so all he can really do here is go, all right, we got a cheap option in Ewers. Maybe he can play. Maybe he's good in the final 3 games. And we actually have a competition next year. And because we're on the hook for Tua's contract, he's going to sit there and be the backup to Quinn bleeping Ewers. And that is like the best case scenario because Ewers ends up playing well enough. Now, I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case, but the last time we saw Quinn Ewers, there was speculation that he might be injured, and that's maybe why his arm strength wasn't necessarily up to snuff. Yeah. And so my point here is, against the Bengals defense, if you can run the running plays and get the ball into the hands of Devon Achane and Jalen Wright and even some Jalen Waddle, you could probably score against this Bengals defense. Yeah. And then it's just a matter of what version of Joe Burrow shows up and feels like playing. And that's the scary part, because we don't know from a mindset perspective what version that we're going to get. And so before this, when it was Tua playing and the line was under a field goal, I was like, oh, I would like the Bengals here, and I'll take my chances that Joe Burrow cares about this game. Yeah. But now, because you're moving the Dolphins, downgrading them with a quarterback who I don't know is really all that different from the current version, because of how they've treated Tua, then now we're getting 5.5 points. Who knows where the line could go? We might get 6. We might get 6.5. Who knows? So it's just a fascinating thing, the skip over from Zach Wilson, because it creates more uncertainty. I don't know that Mike McDaniel's in a place where it's like he needs to just kind of be like vibing and just trying stuff, unless he really thinks that Quinn Ewers, with a full week of reps in a starting position, knowing that they're only going to throw the ball 20 times, and honestly probably less than that, fast forward to a prop that I'm probably going to be playing this week, which is the under on pass attempts for Quinn Ewers one way or another. So yeah, like it's week 16. It's grim, but again, this Dolphins team is not in a position where they can, or at least sort of the organization and the coach and whatnot are in a position. And by the way, they've done the dumb thing where they've won too many games. And we talked about obviously like the Chiefs having won 6 games and being like, oh, you could get a top 10 pick. Like, you know, Andy Reid is in a lot more solid position than Mike McDaniel is. So,
Right.
yeah, I think he's got to do something here. And if he thinks this is the way to do it, because again, he's tired of kind of putting the shackles on a quarterback that makes $250 million, I'm going to
That's
take
crazy.
some points here at home.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it is crazy.
I get it. I get it. I really, really do. It's just one of those, like, I don't know what's going on with Money Mike and co. Like, I get it. You explained it. You laid it out. I see all that. I'm just over it. Over all of them. And I hope to see the bounce back from my guy Burrow and Chase. Or maybe I'm just hoping for a big week from Jamar Chase because it's the fantasy football semifinals. But nobody cares about my fantasy team. We will move on to the Jags at the Broncos. Broncos at home laying 3 points. Big time win last week by the Broncos, as mentioned. I mean, they look like the class of the AFC for sure. Just keep the win streak continues. They just keep finding ways to do it. The Jacksonville Jaguars also continuing to win games as well. This is a tough one. And I'll be honest with you, I am surprised that I am on the Jacksonville Jaguars because I am a noted bias towards the Jacksonville Jaguars. And maybe that's why I'm starting my lead here because I'm trying to give them a little more credit and hope that you can talk me into taking the Broncos laying 3 points. But the reality is that the Broncos, yes, I know they covered last week, but I think overall they were the dogs last week, right? But I think when they're laying a number and laying more than a field goal, or, you know, the ask here is to do that, that's where things become a little tricky with the Broncos. So this is where I'm starting. I'm starting with Jacksonville +3.
I always like it when you say that you're surprised about a thing that you do. Like when you're like, I'm surprised I'm picking this team here. And it's like, you are you. Like
you are you.
Why are you surprised about things that you do? I was getting a kick of that.
That's the name of my autobiography. Surprised by the things that I do.
I'm surprised I did that. Fair. You're not alone, my friend. What were we talking about? Oh, yes, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, so this is the game where, as we've seen all season long, the teams that we go like, are they good? Because they've won a bunch of games and are all of a sudden in a certain place in the hierarchy or the standings, as some like to call it. Mm-hmm. But you know what's happened this season? Like those teams, including Denver, like they actually do it. Mm-hmm. You know, like the Bears. It's like, oh man, I don't know if the Bears can do it against the Eagles. I'm like, oh yeah, no, they just win. Yeah. And the Broncos beat the Packers. The Broncos beat the Chiefs. And go on down the line, right? Even the loss for the Patriots last week, right? Like even just going up 21-0.
Yeah.
If you're sitting there at some point going like, damn, man, like the Patriots might be for real. And then obviously the heroics of Josh Allen swoop in and kind of kick the door down a little bit there. But like all season long, it's been like, is this team for real? And the actual answer has been yes for the most part. So if the question here is like, can the Jags do this? Every other team that's kind of had the same run here, which as we talked about numerous times, like if you win NFL football games, you're doing something right. And if that just means like you're not screwing stuff up, then like I'm cool with that because I'm just looking for teams out here to not screw stuff up. But yeah, it's a step up in weight class, you know, or maybe both these teams are just kind of the same as, you know, surprise-ish contenders. And the reality is, from a talent perspective, like the Jags a couple of years ago were in the playoffs, and the Broncos were just in the playoffs last year. So should we really be all that surprised? Now, the head coaching element for the Liam Cohen comes in, and like, you know, if the expectation that was like instantly they were going to like just win all of the games, like that was probably asking too much. And so you get into a softer point in the schedule, and like you're not just beating these teams, like you're beating these teams pretty damn bad. And so like that's impressive too. And so watching the Broncos game, again, it's worth mentioning they were down 9 before the injuries started to happen. Mm-hmm. Two, the defense has sloughed off a little bit. They have the reputation. You see the individual plays in the case of like Surtain, but like the metrics for the Broncos has sloughed off a little bit. And then there's Sean Payton, who is just out here seemingly trying to make it the most difficult it can possibly be to sort of challenge that defense by the decisions that he makes on offense, because he's the offensive play caller and ostensibly the offensive coordinator. And it's just like, yeah, like we're going to try all of this stuff. We're going to go for it on fourth downs because I want to keep the ball, because he's like he's playing a video game where he doesn't get to play the video game if they go on defense. It's like, I just want to keep playing the video game. It's like, yeah, but we're trying to win a football game here, man. And so when they win all of these close games, again, that's a closer game than the 8 points necessarily suggest, because the Packers offense kind of fell apart after Christian Watson goes out.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like the Jags are, again, some of the competition, I completely get it. The Jags offense, speaking of offensive coordinator / head coach, is doing really well in the last like 2 months of the year.
Yeah.
And the defense is doing really well and turning teams over. And so it's like, yeah, could they do that against Denver? Like, yeah, they absolutely could. And so both these teams from a market perspective have shot up. The Jaguars are just right on the edge of their range, rated as a 59 out of 100. And if you sort of said like 3 weeks from now, as we get into the playoffs, are the Jaguars going to be higher or lower than 59? From a rating perspective?
Ooh.
There's more room, I think, on the top side to be sort of proven that they're a little bit better than that. The Broncos have been in that same situation. You and I have talked about it basically seemingly every week. We're like, yeah, they're still only in the 50s. Like, it's not like people are going nuts about betting on the Broncos and thinking that the Broncos are some like incredible big deal. And so they're finally, after that win last week, 63. They're finally into the 60s. Like, we did it, everybody. We got there.
Yeah.
And so now there's no real case other than thinking, oh, maybe the Broncos are 65 or 66, where it's like there's not that much room on the top side anymore, right? Like, it's we're not going to 70, I don't think. So it's like, well, maybe there's. And so the point here is like there's not that much room to sort of be better. And you're coming off of a game where, in conjunction with some of the other stuff, now listen, could they still get caught by the Chargers? Maybe, but like that's the type of thing that they're going to have to figure out in week 18 when they play the Chargers, if it even gets that far. Like they have that in sort of the back of their mind, if you will. Other than that, like the path is pretty clear to the number 1 seed in the AFC. Like this isn't that critical of a game for the Broncos, where it's still, because of the teams lingering around, it's still a pretty critical game for the Jags. And so there's more possibility here for a letdown for the Broncos, where it's not that they're not a 63, if we're just going to put a number on it. It's that like they might play like a 58 this week.
Yeah.
Whereas for the Jaguars, they're at 59 right now. I could see them playing to a 59. And by the way, they also might be just better than that. And it's weird because it's the Jags and we don't think of them as any good. But then like Trevor Lawrence throws like 5 touchdowns last week or whatever it was, 4 touchdowns, and runs one in. And you're just like, still doing it against an NFL team. like it's, there's still impressive, even if it's the Jets. Like other teams aren't doing it.
I'm with you, man. And my surprise continues. I actually did the thing where I took the Jags. It's weird. It's weird for me. That's what I'm saying. I surprise myself sometimes. We move on here to the Falcons, who are 2.5-point favorites on the road in Arizona, taking on the Cards. And I'm on the Cardinals plus the 2.5 points here. This is just a lean as it's the home dog in this situation. I'm trying not to buy too much into what we saw Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts do on Thursday night last week. I feel like, that might not be the expectation of Kirk Cousins and that offense on a continuous basis. I think these teams are just evenly matched, and not dead even, but close, right? Like they're in the same weight class, so to speak. And the Cards, I like the Cards. The Cards, again, they do stuff. Jacoby Brissett, right? They do stuff. They keep things close. They move the ball, even though it didn't go well for them or not as well to like for wins and to be like competitive
Yeah.
and stuff. But again,
Sure.
I'm just not overreacting to what Kirk Cousins and company did last week, despite how much my fantasy team might need him this week. But again, no one cares about my fantasy team.
Third time.
I'm on Arizona plus 2.5.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to love the fact then that like the Falcons are rated as a 42, the highest they've been since Michael Penix was injured, because the reality has sort of hit is that like Kirk Cousins, now that there's a little sort of inertia to his season, probably gives them just as much of a chance as Michael Penix does to win football games, maybe more. And so they're kind of back to really right square one where we thought of them before the season started.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, you'll remember, as we referenced earlier, right, when they were underdogs to the Saints, and it was like, oh, that was 3-4 weeks ago. So, if you think that's too high, then, which is, again, the manifestation of you taking Arizona here, then, okay, like that sort of proves like, oh, Falcons have like a really high rating. Arizona has a really low rating of 29 right now. Because, as you mentioned, as much as they're doing stuff, unfortunately, they've had to do stuff against the Texans, who, whatever you think about their rating necessarily, are playing the best football that they've played all season long.
Yeah.
The Rams the week before that, a Rams team coming off of a loss. Mm-hmm. And the 49ers the week they got back Brock Purdy and a couple other players from injury. So they keep kind of facing these teams that are frankly better than them and are probably just going to beat the hell out of them. The one difference being the road game that they played against the Bucs, an NFC South team. And if we learned anything from last week in the NFC South, is that, throw out the records, every team in the NFC South is basically the damn same, right? The Saints are 1-1 against the Bucs. The Saints are 2-0 against the Panthers. The Panthers have still yet to play the Bucs, but who knows what's going to happen in those deals? And meanwhile, the Falcons go on the road to beat the Bucs last week. Trying to think of like what else the Falcons have done. Oh, right. They also lost by 30 to the Panthers earlier on this season. They also took a big lead later to the Panthers and then blew that lead to the Panthers. So maybe this is like the old NFC West where there's like a circle of like, the Saints own the Panthers own the Falcons.
I think that's disrespectful
Bucs and the Bucs
bring up the NFC West. I'm joking.
Well, you know what I mean.
I know.
So now they're playing a team in the NFC West who, most importantly in all of this, appears like their coach is dead man walking and is absolutely not coming back next year, Jonathan Gannon, right? And so on the one hand, you go, okay, the teams that they're getting beat down are much better than this Falcons team. On the negative side of things is like, okay, that happened. It's easy for us to sort of make that excuse for them. However, that doesn't really change the possibility that going forward in the next 3 games, for a team, by the way, who could use the first or a high NFL draft choice for a possible quarterback situation, who has an entire left side of their offensive line that's questionable, and Marvin Harrison, who's questionable, who could easily sit all of those guys, along with 2 different defensive backs. Jalen Thompson already out, or at least last I've heard he's not coming back, and Max Melton. Yeah, won't send it. Yeah. So Jalen Thompson out, Max Melton questionable. Like, again, if you're going to do the thing where just all the questionable guys don't play because losing is beneficial to you. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the Falcons still trying their hardest, right? Down 14 in the fourth quarter. Kirk Cousins, I want a contract for next year, or at least to keep my contract for next year.
Yeah. He's fighting for his life.
The problem is when we get to this point in the season, I don't want to say throw the ratings out because it's important to understand like where we are with all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. But if the Cardinals are just not going to sort of show up defensively, I mean, the Texans are a good team, but 40 points to the Texans?
That's hard.
Dude, like, what are we talking about? So, yeah, like the Falcons could come in there and win that game because they're trying.
All right.
I'm not sure the Cardinals are trying. Again, it's not even telling you to sort of like switch it. It's just sort of like, I think I led with the idea of like, yeah, like this all makes sense, for you, because it seems like the Falcons are overrated and the Cardinals rating can't really go that much lower. But
it's a shootout.
Are they trying?
It's a shootout. I don't know what it's.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're on the Cards. I'm going to stick with the Cards. I'm going to stick with the Cards here.
Okay.
This is a tough one, but I'm going to stick with the Cards. Yeah, maybe it'll help spur Kirk Cousins to, reverse jinx here. But you mentioned the Texans and the number the Texans did here. The Texans are 14.5-point favorites to the Raiders. You guessed it. The only reason this says here on the screen, it says Sheldon says LV plus 14.5.
Good gracious.
It only says that because out of sheer principles, okay, once the number gets so high, I automatically just start here and then go the other way. So I'm automatically starting here and waiting to go the other way, if that makes sense. What say you, my friend?
I mean, after last week, like, does anybody care what I have to say about the Raiders beyond what I've already said about the Raiders? It's worth mentioning Geno Smith. Apparently back.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, again, if I'm going to sit here and be like, well, we saw what Pickett did, and I'm, if I was on the Raiders, I'd be thrilled to have Geno back. And it's like, I can't do that after, Believe talking Geno last week.
How
did the Raiders score against the Texans defense?
Great point.
The Raiders we just saw 2 weeks ago against the Broncos defense.
Yeah.
That's right. And they scored 7 before garbage time in the craziest backdoor in recent memory against the Broncos the previous week, but a 17-point loss to the Chargers the week before that. Again, a game that was 24-7. The Raiders scored in the first quarter on a 70-yard drive with Brock Bowers finishing with a touchdown. Like, that sort of seems like, all things being equal, the Raiders are going to get one touchdown out of probably Brock Bowers, or a very sort of Brock Bowers related type situation. Mm-hmm. And then that's kind of it.
Yeah.
If the defense puts in the same sort of effort that they have over the last few weeks, where it's long drives and whatnot.
Yeah.
The Texans can score 20, 24, but again, I as many as teams that covered last week as big or just had blowouts, I just think of the Tennessee San Francisco game where it's like San Francisco is dominating that game.
And they still
and effectively blowing them out. And they still barely covered because it's just if the fourth quarter kicks in and the one team is still trying super hard and maybe your defense isn't that great, then that can kind of happen. Now, at least with the Texans, if they keep their starters in and they keep the gas pedal on, then we just get to a point where the game is 30-0 and it doesn't really matter. I'll put it this way. If Geno gets sort of announced as in, maybe we get, because it's 14 right now.
I got you, yeah.
With that, right? Maybe there's a minus 13.5
that
we can grab with the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. That's where we're at, but it's maybe we can get a minus 13.5 with the Texans. That'd be sweet. I just don't want anything to do with it.
Well, there's the gong right there. And the gong is, I should mention this because there are obviously new people listening to the pod that might not be familiar with us. That pick of me saying I'm on the Raiders plus 14.5 and then switching it to Houston minus 14.5 is just an old long-standing bit of what used to happen all the time, where it's any double-digit spread, I'm automatically taking the double-digit points and then being talked out of it. And that would lead into the conversation. Yeah. So that's the bit there of what's going on and how I end up saying I'm on the Raiders plus 14.5 and then immediately switching to the Texans. It's just one of the rules we talk about for anyone who might be new to the pod, because, there's new listeners tuning in being like, wait, what? Why didn't you just pick them from the beginning? Because we want to have a conversation. We want to discuss.
There's
we want
an
to talk
element,
things out.
Yeah, there's an element of sort of not obviously asking for permission, but there's sort of is it okay if I lay 14 points in an NFL football game?
Of course.
And you just kind of need somebody to kind of be you know what? In this case, it is okay. In the same way with some of these grim underdogs, right? Where it's is it okay to bet on the Dolphins this week? Yeah. It's maybe. Right. And I think a lot of the cases, because just in the nature of how we all watch these games, you're going to look at a line and immediately think one way or another, right? And like everybody kind of thinks the same way because we all saw the same stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah. So anyway, that's where we're at with that.
Nope. I hear you. I hear you. A big boy game here. I'd like to think, some stuff on the line here. You got the Steelers in Detroit taking on the Lions. Lions at home and laying 7 points. That's a big ask right there, the 7 points. I'm on the Steelers. My inkling there with that high of a spread is to take the Steelers and said 7 points. But I'm going to be honest with you.
Mhm.
I've been waiting for the game where we're just seeing the Lions just run over teams, like meaning their offense is just not stopping and, they're having the fun and everyone's jumping around and the jump and hug, blah, blah. And we just haven't really seen it. And
Yeah.
there's the worry that because I don't really believe in the Steelers, like we picked the Steelers. I bet the Steelers on Monday night, but that was more about the Dolphins than it was about, I believe in Raj, who literally is just, they're doing tush pushes and my guy's just standing there like posing for the camera while they're doing
it's the best thing that Raj does of all the Raj stuff. It's the only sort of permissible or
infuriating.
I like it. I like it. It's the best part of Raj for me.
I'm on the Steelers here, but I'm not liking it. Plus 7 points. That's a lot, but hopefully they can keep it close.
Yeah, I think that's the right side from like a valuation perspective, because like in a loss that they didn't cover in, the Lions have gotten some like market respect.
Yeah.
And I just kind of go like, you don't see that every day. Yeah. And I don't know if it's because of like the lack of respecting the Steelers defense when like you're going up against potentially like a good quarterback indoors, et cetera, but I also think like Raj is probably better off indoors against a defense for the Lions
that's a good call.
Isn't any good either, right? Yeah. And like you're probably still going to get the Dan Campbell like fourth down like go for it festival and like the high leverage different polar opposite sort of results that are kind of possible and all of that. So I'd like to say like 7 seems right to me. 7 seems high based off of like how these teams have been previously rated. And so, I think the market or, sort of people think that like there's just going to be this like kind of the explosion that you sort of referenced, but there isn't really any reason to believe that.
It hasn't happened.
It just hasn't happened yet. And so like, I mean, just look at it this way, right? The look ahead line was -6.5. Last week.
So what happened?
And the Lions lost. Yeah, the Lions lost and didn't cover, and the Steelers won and did cover. And it's like it should go the other way. It should go to 6 because the Steelers rating should go up and the Lions rating should go down, and it hasn't done that. Yeah. And so, I think this is like maybe odds makers or whatever kind of calling their shot and being like, we expect the blowout to kind of come here, but it's like, well, we've been expecting that blowout for a while from the Lions, and it just hasn't.
It just hasn't, indeed. Steelers +7 is the pick there. Sunday Night Football, we got the New England Patriots, as mentioned, a tough loss to the Buffalo Bills last week, but it was a great matchup. It was a great showing for a young upstart team that was looking to show, we belong here. We belong in these battles. And now here comes another big boy matchup against the Ravens, and the Ravens are favored by 3 points at home. I got to be on the Patriots here just because this is a bias pick. This is a bias pick based on what I've been able to trust in the Patriots so far this season versus what I have not been able to trust in the Ravens so far. Am I supposed to believe that just because finally the Ravens did stuff last week that, everything's fixed? It only took till week 15 for you to figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can really buy into that. And if you're telling me I'm getting 3 points with the team that I think might just be better in the New England Patriots, I'm going to take the 3 points with the New England Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it there, man. Like, I don't know that there's much else to sort of say. I mean, other than just kind of the acknowledgement that after last week's loss to the Bills, the Patriots market rating did take a bit of a hit, right? And so meanwhile, the Ravens win that game. Again, part of it is if you believe Joe Burrow going like, I was so bad, there wasn't a team that was, that I would have had me on it that would have won this week. Ipso facto, then like the Ravens kind of got lucky to sort of face the disinterested version of Joe Burrow. And again, I don't know why that version existed, and I don't know why that version showed up last week. Only time will sort of tell, maybe, if we ever get that sort of figured out. But yeah, and it's like you mentioned, right? Like the Patriots are ready to play that game. They get up 21-0. And again, like if we have to shout it from the rooftops or whatever, and I don't know that anybody's not listening, but the reality is they're probably just going to give Matthew Stafford the MVP anyway. Josh Allen's the best football player in the world. And like he's overcoming all of the things that he has to overcome with that franchise, including the coach and the defense and all of that stuff. And he's just doing it. And so if Lamar Jackson can do that, then I would be more confident in betting on the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. We have not seen that, and we didn't really see it last week either, right? A couple of decent passes, a couple of open passes to Zay Flowers. Obviously, the defense coming up with one really big play that who knows what happens if the Bengals score a touchdown there and how that kind of maybe turns the game. I don't know. Point is, it's like it's that one game, and we've seen this. It's like the theme of the season, right? It's, the Eagles play a good game? Now all of a sudden the Eagles are back. Oh, the Ravens play a decent game or have a good result. And again, it's this very parallel this week with both those teams getting these shutout wins against these kind of moribund, efforts. And it's just like, they're just back. And it's like, well, it's week 16. Like you said, we've seen the other versions of these teams. We've seen the Ravens give up like 1 million passing yards to Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. Drake May can do that.
Yeah.
And I get problem, right? Sunday Night Football, prime time, home game, Ravens, Lamar, all of that stuff, right? Like the very terrifying type of thing. And like obviously the need factor, right? The necessity for the Ravens to win this game because of them needing to track down the Steelers. And again, I think we all would sort of like, at least everybody outside of Pittsburgh, would like the Ravens to make the playoffs instead of the Steelers. Because of this like hope that the Ravens haven't figured out and that Lamar Jackson's healthier and that it's all going to sort of work out. And there's just no guarantee of that. And so if I, I'm not going to make this sort of blanket statement and hold me to it or anything like that, but like if the Patriots are getting points at any point from now until they get eliminated from the postseason, like I'd be interested in taking those points.
Yeah, super interesting stuff there for sure. I'm definitely with you there with the New England Patriots, and Ravens got to see it. You mentioned like, are we back? Could the Ravens possibly be back? I mean, one guy we know that is back, Monday Night Football,
the Riv Man,
Philip Old Man Rivers. I feel like I got to call him Old Man Rivers from now on. But what a performance. I still can't even believe that. I mean, it was pretty funny. Like we were joking around about it last week, about it being a possibility because it just sounded insane. And even watching the game, I watched a lot of that game and it was funny to watch him out there. But I got to be honest, it wasn't until the end of the game and I watched his post-game presser and he was pretty emotional, like talking about it, that it really kind of set in like, wait, he really just did that. Like, that's insane. Like, it is pretty insane what he just did off the street to walk in and be an NFL quarterback. Anyways, how does this relate to this week's game, Monday Night Football against the San Francisco 49ers? Well, the Niners and their defense and Mr. Salah and Kyle Shanahan, you just had a week to watch what Phil Rivers can and more importantly, cannot do. And so you have, there's a moment everyone's like, oh, well, how come the Seahawks, why are they having so much trouble? Why can't they do this? Why can't they do that? It's like, well, you have this huge unknown of what you're facing at the quarterback position. And as the game went along, you could see what throws he was comfortable making, what throws he wasn't comfortable making. You could gear up and just know that they're running the ball like 95% of the time on first and second down. And now the Niners have all that information to go up against it. And I would lean on taking the points, remove my Niners fan bias out of this. I would lean on taking the points with the home dog in this one because it's 6 points, because it's a lot. but not in this instance, not with the team that I trust their preparation and their game planning and what they'll be able to do against a limited quarterback that can only do so much, which then limits the offense as well. And what the Niners do on offense, flipping it to the other side, is they just grind you down. And it'll be ugly. And even with the big spreads, and this isn't as big as we've seen the last couple of weeks, but the game will be close, but they'll just grind you down. They'll keep running the ball. Brock Purdy will make all the easy passes. And eventually they'll win by double digits. So I'm taking the Niners here on the road, laying the 6 points. Here we go.
Yeah, man. No notes. I mean, why am I even here? It's unbelievable. Like the credit, I haven't seen anybody get credit, or like an old, quote unquote, old person get credit for not dying since my grandparents drove from Vancouver to Palm Springs back in the early 2000s. Like no one could believe it. It's like, how did they do this? Because 120 passing yards, like this isn't Joe Flacco a couple of years ago, which was like, he won comeback player of the year because he comes back and I was like, Joe Flacco. And it's like, oh yeah, he's throwing 50 times a game for 300 yards on that Browns team, like leading them to the playoffs. But because it's this sort of crazy story. And like, he's also not coming off of like a car wreck or anything like that. He probably feels like he's coming off a car wreck this week. And he's not 50 years old. He's 44. Like Tom Brady was playing at 44. And like, if we're not careful, Aaron Rodgers might be playing at 44. It's the layoff. And it's the layoff of not playing for 5 years. But he's a Hall of Fame level quarterback who threw for 50,000 yards, right? And like has been in football still, sort of like thinking about football and da-da-da-da-da. And so it's like, what would it look like if a guy who hasn't played for 5 years just plays? And it's like, probably a lot like that, where he sort of checks it down to 120 yards. Yeah. He doesn't do anything like inherently dumb. No, listen, a couple of, we talk about like the Chargers somehow catching every interception. Like if a ball deflects in a certain way, then there's maybe more than just the game-ending interception in that space. So I think you're right. Like I don't love the 49ers defense, but at the same time, if you don't have to worry about the guy throwing the ball 20 yards down the field on you, defense gets a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah.
And so, again, we'll see 25 carries to Jonathan Taylor, and it's going to be on the 49ers, who are going to know that that's coming, to be able to defend that anyway, right? Because, 75% of all run plays in the NFL are run plays done when the other team knows that they're coming, right? Whether it's like a kill situation at the line or just a 1st and 10, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you got to block it up. Or in the case of the 49ers, you got to avoid them blocking it up. And so they're going to know it's coming. What can you do? And how can you avoid Jonathan Taylor not breaking one on you? And therefore sort of focusing on the idea that like, if you just can hold them to 13 points or 16 points, can the 49ers offense score 24, 27 points, something along those lines? And, we've talked about DeForest Buckner and like the importance for him on the Colts defense. He was back last week. Can the Colts play better defense and good enough defense to be able to hold the 49ers, who, as we referenced, just pretty much just walked the Titans up and down the field last week? Mm-hmm. I don't know that the whole like home field advantage, like indoors thing, is really going to help the Colts in the way that you would sort of normally think that, when I think the 49ers are going to be able to get guys open, kind of at their leisure.
Yeah, super interesting one for sure. And of course, we're recording this, as mentioned, on Wednesday, and we're talking about a game that will take place next Monday. So of course, check in. Keep up to date with what's going on with your man's Phil Rivers between now and then, of course, because, my guy might wake up with a bad back or something. Who knows? Anything is possible. But I did promise this, and I know I mentioned it a couple times throughout the pod.
Oh boy, here we go. Let's do it.
Semifinals. Fantasy.
Yeah.
Fantasy. 2 quarterback league.
Football.
I have, starting this season, my quarterbacks were Michael Penix Jr., and Patrick Mahomes. It's been a tough ride. Okay. My team finished with the most points by a lot in this league because of my receivers of Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jamar Chase.
They're good.
They're not bad.
Those are decent.
Pretty good.
Those are decent. Those are decent football players.
So I've survived the bad quarterbacks play throughout this season. And now Patrick Mahomes is down. So my decision here in the semifinals in this 2-quarterback league, which again, everybody hoards quarterbacks for this reason. My decision is to start 2 of Gardner Minshew.
Quinn Ewers.
Quinn Ewers. Oh, that's a good call, actually. See, this is why I'm asking the question. God. It's Gardner Minshew. It's Phillip Rivers.
Yeah.
It's Kirk Cousins. It's Kenny Pickett. Quinn Ewers. I got to look and see if he's available right now. But my point is I got to start 2 quarterbacks. And I don't know who to start here. And nobody cares about my fantasy team. I understand
It's not Rivers.
It's not Rivers. Right.
It's not Rivers. It's not Pickett because, again, I think, unless Geno's health takes a turn for the worse here in the next week or so.
Yeah, Geno's back, it looks like, yeah. So it's Gardner Minshew, Kirk Cousins, Quentin Ewers is getting the start. Wow.
It's Kirk Cousins for sure. It's not Gardner Minshew. Or again, I'll be furious. I'll be furious if he throws one touchdown. Yeah, if he throws one touchdown this week, I'm going to be furious.
Wow. Quinn Ewers, that's the look there. Wow.
Quinn Ewers, you're hoping that the run game sets them up in the red zone where he can throw a short touchdown. 2, Devon Achane takes a screen pass 60 yards for a touchdown.
Okay.
Both of those are more to me realistic than Gardner Minshew doing anything on offense.
Or Phil Rivers.
To me, the max on Phil is 140 yards with a touchdown.
This is rough. But here we are.
As insane as it is to say out loud, what's the availability on Jets quarterbacks in this league?
Brady Cook is available. That appears to be it, actually. Yeah,
I would rather be. That means the other 2 guys are.
Yeah, that means someone else has Tyrod Taylor.
Jiminy Christmas.
Again, I have Kenny Pickett on my team, right? So this is where we're at.
That's where the bar is. Yeah, no, that's for sure.
I've been stashing Jameis on my team this whole season, hoping that he gets back in.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. It's rough.
Yeah, I would rather Brady Cook on my roster than listen, Kenny Pickett. I mean, you can easily drop Brady Cook for Kenny Pickett and then make that sort of call. But
on Sunday,
Jets against Saints, knowing that they apparently have no problem throwing the ball with Cook a billion times is probably a better option for a Christmas miracle than even Quinn Ewers. I explained, obviously explained what the sort of idea behind Ewers potentially getting points is.
Yeah.
I mean, at least he's got red zone option and like Tua did the other day, right? Where it's just throw it up high to Darren Waller and let Darren Waller
do
fight
something
for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
No, it's fair. It's fair.
I mean, if that isn't the grim reality, I will weigh in. I got knocked out in fantasy football last week, and this is all you need to know about fantasy football. I traded Bo Nix for Patrick Mahomes.
Oh,
and I picked up Joe Burrow for nothing.
Okay.
Off of the waiver wire after he was hurt.
Okay.
And those 2 moves, acquiring Patrick Mahomes for Bo Nix and getting Joe Burrow for free, cost me my fantasy football season.
Yep.
Truly, sorry, you're dumb. You traded Bo Nix for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And you picked up Joe Burrow for nothing.
It's the insanity.
Why would you trust those two quarterbacks? Yeah, it's stupid. That's why I only play in one league, because the whole thing is BS.
Yeah. You know what's not BS, though? All of the great content that you put out on these streets each and every single day, whether it's the NFL, whether it's college football, there's just so much whole grain goodness that you are putting out to the masses each and every week. Where can the people find you, my friend?
Highlight of the early bowl season, Shell coming on before the podcast saying he read my article about college game last night, the Salute to Veterans Bowl, saw that the line had moved from +3 to -3 and said, screw it, I'm betting on Jacksonville State anyway. Not necessarily what we're sort of looking for our readers to be doing, but it worked. It somehow worked out. One of the more wonkier bowl games from a market perspective, as the Jacksonville State running back Cam Cook opted out roughly 12 seconds before the game started. I think they literally put the ball on the tee and he was like, I'm out. So yeah, that was sort of a fun quote unquote start to bowl season, college football playoff stuff. And of course, all things NFL over at the window over on Substack. So go to substack.com or download the Substack app, type in Matt Russell, sports betting, Matt Russell, the window, any combination of those words, and you're going to find your way to us and hopefully take in the content for the rest of the season. And then we get into college basketball, a robust start to the season in college basketball. Going to be a fun March Madness with so many star players and so many teams that could win. And then, of course, the Stanley Cup playoffs, the pure insanity of 1 a.m. overtime, and wondering if we're going to win or lose, whether a puck goes off a guy's shin or not. Can't wait for that as well. So plenty between now and then. So come hang out over at the window over at Substack.
I'll be honest, Matt, and you know this, the last few years I've been kind of out on March Madness. Like I'll tune in, I'll dabble, I'm actually kind of excited to try and dive into March Madness this year because the star power is here. That's what I need. Give me some names. Give me some top 5 picks. Give me some dudes I need to know about heading into the draft next season. Easiest way to get me hooked and excited for March Madness. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Loaded with dudes.
Yeah. Loaded. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Shell Alexander, and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Like, follow, tell your friends, subscribe, all that other fun stuff. Give us your picks in the comments. Let us know what you agree with, what you disagree with, what you liked, what you didn't like. All that other fun stuff. Because as I always say, I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. As always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.